Story 1. Neglectful dad and evil stepmom tried to kick me out of my own house to give it to my spoiled pregnant stepsister because her boyfriend left her and she is nothing. My M34 miserly self-centered and usually absent dad M62 has recently found out how much I'll earn and shockingly, so he has decided to kick me out of my own house all in the name of family. Ash F29, my stepsister and daddy's little gem who does nothing wrong ever, has magically gotten pregnant and obviously with her very self-reliant goals of being an escort and an OnlyFans model. She has trouble getting herself a place to stay. Now daddy wants to fix everything and I'm the fix. Unfortunately, I got to give up my house and my hard-earned cash to this woman because she made all the wrong choices. Now I'm the guy my dad openly rejected as a responsibility multiple times, but ever since he found out about my new house, job, and surprisingly income as well, he's gotten pretty touchy about how we're the same blood. While I'm not quite excited about him frequently reminding me who my father is, he's also aiming to strengthen the bonds I have to his wife and her daughter, Grand Ed. She's my dad's kid too, but I was cast away far too early to make any kind of connection with the woman. Glad I didn't, 'cause I'd be so disappointed. Before you all start, I just want to remind you all that I'm only here to vent out my emotions, okay? So I got opinions and thoughts and feelings to write out. They might not sound okay to you and you may disagree, but I'm just letting you know anyway 'cause frankly I don't have anyone else to tell. Now let's introduce Ash, short for Ashlyn, who's my half-sister. She's around 5 years younger than me and she's making her dad proud. Literally dad. Dad's delusional caused this woman's out there doing nothing but being an escort, sleeping around with a flop OnlyFans, and my father calls her his pride. Yep, you read that right. I'm guessing he doesn't know the main deal. Who's gonna tell him now? I'm not very conservative, but I try to focus on my morals and career. I court women when I find time to try and get to know them better. Sometimes there's a spark, but other factors come into play like long distance and availability issues. Other times there's no understanding at all. I try not to sleep with random people. I think I should wait for the right woman. Having a high body count grosses me out. I don't know why guys show it off like a metal disgusting anyway. This is what I apply to my own life. My stepsister is sadly the opposite in opinion. She probably has lost count of her physical partners. Then she's an escort now, where that in its own disgusts me. There's also the fact that it's extremely dangerous too. Some guys like to do weird stuff to escorts. I don't know how anyone would think it's okay to work like that. Then she uploads inappropriate videos and photos of herself on the internet to make money off it, and she doesn't get much success there, probably doesn't know how to get the traffic running, but for whatever reason it's a flop. How do I know of it? Here's an embarrassing narrative. My friend told me about it, said Ash texted him one time after they met for a drink and asked him if he wanted to have fun. Now hearing the story I'd already heated up a bit because the guy went out with my sister, but he said it was when he didn't know she was my sister. I don't know if he's telling the truth, but he said she'd sent him the link to her page and he showed it to me too. She's always broke and asking dad for money, so I think it isn't working too well for her. I couldn't bring myself to ask her about it directly and I never told dad of it either. Another time I saw her taking a call and then sitting in the car with an elderly guy. He gave her flowers and they drove off. She would sneak back in the house through the window at odd hours. I noticed this when I used to come home from college for the holidays. I don't know if she's still at it though, but I don't want to be a part of any of it. I have a respected post where I work and I'm happy about it. Finally, I haven't lived much with a new family since my dad was bothered enough to send me away any chance he got. But I have seen Ash close enough to say that she takes after her mother, Marissa F58. Marissa was she believed she was quite the icon in her prime. She used to be a flight attendant and was fairly attractive to womanizing males like my dad. Now she's a typical botched face Karen, if you know what I mean. She with her claw-like hands with nails longer than her lipstick manages the neighborhood daycare of sorts. Weird how parents would leave their kids with Edward Scissorhands like that. She may poke out a child's eye with those long nails anyway. She's just as pokey as her nails. She has an opinion about everything and loves to cause problems in other people's lives. She has a very bad voice and has more plastic in her body than the ocean. She's as genuine as fake leather. She influences dad for the worst. She was, I believe, a major reason why my dad didn't think twice before sending me away to boarding school when I was 8 because she didn't want to raise a kid that wasn't her own. Now let me tell you about my dad. He's kind of the main problem in all this, really. He thinks whatever he does in life is justified even when it's far, far from it because he's lived a whole life so he knows better. Says he regrets having me because I'm nothing like him. Thank God I'm not. My mom was a strong woman. She knew her priorities well and took good care of my dad. But they fell out. She used to tell me that dad wasn't a bad person, just a different person, and no matter what happens he's always going to be my dad and I should never forget that. But she was a good soul. She didn't want to poison my thoughts against my father. I'm sure he was as unbearable to her as he is today. They separated and divorced a few months later. I was 4 years old at the time, and then 2 months after the divorce my dad married Marissa. They had Ash when I turned 5 and then my mom died in a car crash. I can't forget it because she was out to come get me from school. She had always been on time. Just once she was 10 minutes late to me. It seemed like an hour, but it was 10 minutes. She got hit at an intersection by a drunkard. He survived and she did not. He got a DUI in a few years and I was left alone forever. I waited in school and it took them 2 hours to come and get me. I was lied to and confused since my dad had come. I'll never forget his annoyance when he looked over at dead-faced Marissa and asked what they should do about me, and she said, "Your kid, your problem." Precisely, Dad. Now you can't come and tell me I'll have to take care of your spoiled kid. I have a stable job finally and manage a few small businesses on the side. I've worked really hard since I turned 15 and I've been earning since after boarding school. I went to college, only visited during the holidays, so I've been out on my own since 8. I put in a lot of effort to get where I am and recently bought a house. It's a nice little place, much better than the shared apartment I had with my friends. It was a life goal I thought I'd never achieve. Thing is, I only just moved in last month. I may not like my family enough, but basic decency was to involve them in a moment this big, so I invited them to the housewarming too. My dad's reaction was pretty sad to watch. He looked envious, to be honest, a little annoyed as he asked about the furniture, the architect, and the interior designer. I told him what I thought was good enough info and he responded with taunts like, "I wouldn't know, you never bothered telling me," trying to gain attention, making our weak relationship obvious in front of friends and work colleagues, even my boss. A week passed and I got a call from him. I was at work and had this complex project to manage. He said he wanted to meet since it was urgent and I agreed. I went home and saw a very angry Marissa and swollen red-eyed Ash giving me a side eye from the living room. Dad was in the kitchen taking out bottles of beer from the fridge. He offered me one and I politely declined, worried what he'd say. I asked him what he wanted me for and he raised his brows and responded with another question. Asked me if I'd finally started giving a damn about us. I frowned in confusion because I didn't understand what he was getting at. He asked me to join Ash and Marissa in the living room. I nodded and went over to a couch across the two and sat down. Ash folded her arms and Marissa rolled her eyes. Dad walked in and sat with him facing me. He put his beer bottle on the coffee table and leaned back. He then asked me if I were blind. There was a pause, confusion at my end and anger at theirs probably. Before I could respond he asked, adding that it's either I'm blind or I choose not to see things that need to be seen. He said I had probably gotten very proud ever since I got a house and refused to look at the people who actually mean something to me. I sighed and asked him what he meant by all of that and requested that he'd be more clear. He blew sarcastically and then told me I was unbothered by the serious situation in the room. He said that I chose not to see that the family was in jeopardy and I had decided not to offer to or be of any sort of help. Obviously, I asked him what jeopardy he was referring to. He looked over at Ash, who rolled her eyes and announced that she's pregnant. Like any normal person, I wanted to congratulate her. But before I could, she started crying. Marissa hugged her and told me I should know what's going on at home, that I should care enough to ask. Dad said Ash has just found out she's pregnant, and the boy responsible has now broken up with her because of it. Marissa added that Ash has decided to keep it, and that is what we should base further decisions on. All I could manage to say was, "Can she afford it?" I got a death stare by both Ash and Marissa, and honestly I meant well. It was my concern. In my head I had already assumed that maybe they want me to chip with money to help her out, and I was genuinely ready to do that. But then Dad stood and walked over to my side and sat down with me. He then said that that was why he called me. He said that he's a good father to his girl and maybe my mother didn't teach me how to be a good brother. But brothers would give their life away for the comfort of their sisters. I beg your effing pardon. I know my financial input is needed, but I'm not dying for her. I sighed and asked what he wanted me to do about it. He smiled and patted my back and said that's my good boy. I gave a fake smile which got off my face the moment Dad spoke his next few words. Words, you're giving your house to Ashlyn. No, I'm not. Yes, that's what I said. Immediately Dad frowned. He asked me why not. So I told him that I could help out with some cash. But the house is mine. I can lend her a room without rent until she can manage to pay for it, and Dad stood from his seat and shouted nonsense. It makes perfect sense to me, Dad. But he insisted I not only give her the house but also move out and buy another for myself. I argued that Ash couldn't even afford to pay the bills and manage the house if she's having a baby and unemployed, and Dad told me that those would also be my responsibilities. Excuse me? Hell to the no. I was furious, but I had to remain respectful, so well got to my feet and told him that was not possible and that I would now be leaving. Then I left. He didn't stop there. He then showed up at my house a week later while I was at work. I don't know how he got inside where he got the keys from, but when I came home I saw men moving boxes outside the house. Boxes full of my stuff. I hurried inside as I asked them what they were doing, and they told me the house owner has ordered them to throw that stuff out. I showed that I was the owner of the house and that they should get my stuff back inside and leave immediately. I lost my cool, but this was the last thing I'd expected to witness coming home too. I went inside to find Dad and Ash, and they still stood there demanding I do what brothers should do. I told them to leave, but they didn't listen, so Elle told them I'd call the cops on them. That's when they finally left. They badmouthed me using curses and whatnot. Now I know this is a lot to read, but it was so much worse in person. A week has passed and I kind of feel bad about it, which is why I'm posting here. Was I wrong? I feel like they need me and I shouldn't cut them off like this, but I also feel like there are limits to what I'm okay doing for them. It angers me how disconnected and unbothered they were about me as I grew up, but now they expect me to lay my life for them. Bit much, don't you think? Let me know. I can't even involve my friends in this. You all are all I have right now. Update 1. Hey you all. I hope you all are well. Been a week since I posted, and honestly I didn't expect it to get the attention it got. I read the comments as they came and so made me question a lot of things, but soon enough I decided not to cut my family off entirely. This was because I received a call from Ash. She told me she wanted to meet me and I accepted it. She asked to meet at my house since she wanted to tell me a few things, but I was still recovering from the scene made last time. Therefore I insisted we meet somewhere else. We went to a coffee shop and she was pretty uneasy in the start. Normally she's pretty arrogant and rude, but she seemed pretty unlike herself. We sat in the corner and she told me she'd recently been broken up with. I responded saying I had an idea since Dad said that the guy who got her pregnant had left her. She shook her head and said that that's what Dad thinks. I asked her then what was it really, and she told me that Dad thinks her BF left her because he has commitment issues, but in reality she's the one with the commitment issues. Shocking, right? She said that she really cared for this guy, but he'd found out about a few things in regards to her just a few days before she broke the pregnancy news to him. When they met he wanted to confront her for those things, but she spoke first and that enraged him further. He got pretty crazy at that moment and put a hole in the wall. She said he scared her, then he told her he was breaking up with her and left without hearing her response. She's been trying to call him constantly and he doesn't respond at all. He's only texted her back once saying that she needs to get rid of the kid first and let him know, only then will he speak to her at all. But she has to get rid of the kid to get that chance. Now I know Ash ain't a saint, but this guy, I don't like this guy at all. I only asked her what those things were that he'd found out and she said it'd be weird to tell a brother about it. I kind of understood that she was probably referring to the on the vans and escorting, so I shrugged and said that it's okay if she doesn't want to tell me before I could speak, to ask her what she'd wanted to meet before she drew in a deep breath and let it out. Then she told me that she'd been involved in shady things. I was worried as I didn't really want to hear the confirmation to all my suspicions, but I did. She told me that she'd wanted to paint and become an artist, but Marissa told her that it wouldn't fetch her a good life or money. Ash was told that she needed to find herself a man as soon as possible. Soon enough she started gaining the attention of elderly men, which kind of grossed her out at first. When she told Marissa about it, She told Ash that that was a good thing. It was indeed the older men that knew what to do with the money they had, and that they were the ones making any money at all. Ash was only 19 at the time, and Marissa told her college wouldn't or couldn't fetch her a good, comfortable life. Ash had youth, and there were many who would pay for that. Ash decided she wanted to become a model. She tried and went to many modeling agencies. None seemed to be interested in her. Then she met a guy in his 40s who told her he could get her a gig. He took her to parties and bought her expensive clothes and jewelry for the events, and she was happy until she was told about her first gig. Turns out she was to sell her time to a man in exchange for a modeling gig. She thought it would just be dinner, but it was a night and she spent it. She did get a small modeling gig where she got to take photos for a small brand, but that was it. A few more men used her while she hoped for a gig in return, but she'd be told that they didn't select her. She then found out that the guy investing in her was actually selling her. He was profiting off of her. She thought it unwise to confront him for it because she was afraid he'd have her killed. So she told him that she didn't want to pursue modeling anymore and was okay with minimum wage jobs. Thankfully, he let her go without an issue. She then tried to wait tables at bars, and it was pretty tough for her. That's what hard-earned cash is for Ash. But anyway, she also said that Marissa would humiliate her for choosing to do those small jobs. She'd tell her women are the beauty of this world and should only be there to shine and smile like a showpiece. They need to be taken good care of and so on. So Ash started going out with men only for dinner, but she charged for it. She said there were many loners out there who just want a conversation, but that too ended up with stalkers and obsessive men who thought they were owed more than what they'd paid for. She decided that talking to men, making them feel connected to her, was more problematic than sleeping with them, so she started escorting. It worked fine until a friend told her about on the vans. She tried to get it going, but she wasn't really good at handling a camera and editing things. She wasn't social enough, and it required a lot of work, so that didn't work out either. And then she met her BF, who was an exco worker. He worked at a barista and they met again. She liked him a lot, but he was too clingy. He was a little possessive too and didn't trust her much. Granted, he had every reason to doubt her because she was in fact still on all the vans and an escort without his knowledge. She stopped escorting at all the vans completely, and her BF started taking care of her with a little money he made, and she was fine with it. Marissa wasn't though. But then she got pregnant and her BF found out everything. She said she has a few men on the list who could be potential fathers. They all chip in with money to support the kid and her. One of them had even proposed to her, but she knows all of them are doing it because they think they're the only one there is, which is ridiculous since they know she's an escort, but she doesn't outrightly tell them that Kate pays her bills and would probably help with the kid. She said she decided to tell me all this because she couldn't tell Dad, and Dad thinks she's only been modeling here and they're making little money, and that she had one guy in her life who left her when he should have stayed. Marissa knows most of it and suggests Ash marry the guy who proposed and let him think he's the father. But Ash doesn't know what to tell Dad then. Also, she doesn't want to marry the guy cause he's weird and old, and she doesn't want to let anyone believe a lie. I asked her what she wanted me to help with, and she said that some financial input would be fine, and she wants me to make up with Dad. She said that should agree to what Dad's asking and then move out for some time. Then I could come back when matters aren't as heated. How's that a solution? I respectfully declined her offer and told her I could only contribute some cash. But I wasn't okay with moving out of my own house. She then told me I was selfish for thinking like that she exposed her whole life to me and I didn't have the least bit of decency to help her out even then. She said Dad was right about me and I deserved to be sent to an orphanage and not taken in when I needed a place to live. She got up and stomped away. I think my response wasn't too extreme, but is it selfish really? What do you think of her side of the story? Does it justify her demands? Should I trust her? I feel like she was telling the truth. But does it mean I should do what she's asking for? Let me know, y'all. Update 2. This thing's picking at my brain at this point. Another week has passed and a few things happened. Thought I'd hit the keys and update y'all on it. Thanks for the support on my previous update, you guys. Such a relief to have people support my thoughts for once. Anyway, so after I met Ash, I got a call from Dad. He wanted to meet me at the bar and settle a few things. Curious, I agreed and went to meet him. We sat at the counter and he said that he knew how much I'm earning. I asked him why does it matter, and he said he knew I could afford to buy another house in a few years. I shrugged and told him I already have a house and this discussion should seriously be put to an end. He insisted that I didn't have a family yet and it's harder for women to raise a child alone. That kid needs a safe space he can call home, so I reminded Dad that Ash has been living with them long enough and nothing seemed to be a problem. A little baby won't hurt. I also asked him what she would do living alone in a whole house when she's pregnant. I said she needed to be surrounded by people so that she can be taken care of. That's when Dad shocked me once again. He said he and Marissa would move in with Ash in my house. Couldn't believe my ears. Before I could react to that, the bartender let out a sarcastic chuckle. Dad took offense and asked him what was so funny to him. Ash, he replied. He said she uses everyone and then throws them away. My dad asked him if he knew who he was talking about and he nodded, saying he was her boyfriend. My eyes widened, so this was the guy. Dad balled his fists and spoke sternly to the guy, asking him why he thought it was okay to start a family he couldn't support. The guy held his hands up and told Dad that he wasn't responsible for the family in question. Also, he had no interest in raising a child that was not his own. Dad dared him to explain why he thought that. He smiled and told us that he'd had a vasectomy done last year because he didn't want any kids. But Ash still got pregnant. Also, he found her driving off with different men after lying to him about where she'd been going. Then he found out she had, and on the Vance said he didn't want to believe any of it. When Ash finally told him they were having a baby, that was the last straw for him. He couldn't have a kid, so it confirmed it all. He told Ash that she'd been cheating on him all along and he knew, and she spilled the beans. All I could watch was Dad's face shifting from anger to shock to disappointment while my ears were pinned to the guy's voice. He shrugged and told us he owed Ash nothing, rather she owed him money times sincerity and at the very least love. He said he didn't know if Dad knew any of it, but he was sure no dad would be proud of a kid like that. Dad tightened his lip and got off the stool without a word and walked away. Later that evening, he texted me telling me he had to go pick Marissa from her yoga class. I don't know what went on after that, but I'm sure it was something, because the very next day I found Ash at my door crying. She told me I ruined everything. I pulled her inside to avoid a scene and calmed her down to tell her that I didn't tell Dad anything. It was her boyfriend who happened to be the bartender where Dad and I had gone. She then told me Dad told her to quit everything and stay at home, said he was disgusted with her and never thought she'd resort to such practices. He told her to mend her ways and find a good man. Then he also pointed out that her chances to find good men were pretty slim now. I listened to her and hugged her. She said she was sorry for thinking it was me because Dad had just come home from meeting me when he confronted her. I forgave her, and then she went back home. While she was ranting and telling me about how pathetic she felt, she mentioned that Marissa was pretty quiet when Dad was talking about good women and their loyalty, like she could say anything. Ash said one of the things she can't speak about. I asked her what she meant by that, and she said that Marissa couldn't have an opinion since she is yoga. I could only frown in confusion before Ash continued on with her crying as she narrated what else happened. Yoga stuck with me. What do y'all think really happened? Is Ash going to be Dad's pride still? No one's contacted me ever since. I'm gonna see and let y'all know though. I know y'all probably didn't expect me getting back to you so soon, but I couldn't help it. Update 3. Just 2 days after my last upload, and I'm here for the ones asking Ash's ex's name is irrelevant, but we can call him Bob. Here's the new bit. So the day before yesterday, I went to meet Dad. I told him I decided a few things. I said that I'd wanted to help raise Ash's kid and I was ready to lend a room to her. I would be okay to pay for the diapers and stuff, but she needs to get a job as soon as she can. Dad told me that then there'd be no one with a baby, so Elle suggested she tried freelancing or working from home. Dad wasn't his usual rude self this time. He took a pause and then sighed. He sat down on the couch and told me he thought I hated him. He was right, but I asked him why he thought that. He said it was because Mom hated him too. I quickly told him she never told me that she always told me Dad loved me and cared about me. I told him that the only reason why I was disappointed at all was how wrong my perception of Dad was. Mom told me all that, and then what I felt from Dad was total neglect and lack of care. He rubbed his eyes and told me he hated himself for a lot of things. Said he liked Mom, but they hadn't known one another long enough to decide if they were actually each other's type. He sighed and said that he got her pregnant and that's why he had to marry her. She was a good wife to him, but he never felt the spark between them, and then he met Marissa. when he said that I could feel my insides tingling. I couldn't move. I didn't know any of this. Dad told me that Marissa sparked a flame in him he never knew he had. He was so happy with her, and before he knew, he caught feelings before he could navigate his way through rights and wrongs. He got Marissa pregnant too, and then he told Marissa it was wrong. But it was too late, she was pregnant. He told her to wait, he wanted to tell Mom first. But Marissa felt insecure and came to our house. She told Mom everything. Mom confronted Dad, and he accepted it. It was a very ugly episode because Mom was extremely hurt, but even then she was polite and asked Dad for a divorce, y'all. My parents divorced cause Dad had an affair with my stepmom and got her pregnant. I don't know how worse this man could get. Dad took a pause and looked over at me. He said that he'd spent a nice year with Marissa when Mom died and he had to bring me home. Marissa hated everything about it. She was again insecure that Dad might prioritize me over their baby somehow because of guilt or whatever, so he sent me away to boarding school 3 years later, and then I never had to stay home long enough to cause Marissa any discomfort. Love makes you do stupid things, he said, and I wanted to punch this man in the face, but I controlled it. I turned around to see Marissa standing in the doorway, water bottle in hand. She said she was just leaving for the yoga class, and she put her bottle on the table and went in the kitchen. I blinked, and before I could think straight, she was back and went through the door. I was numb, so I followed her out. I picked up her water bottle to return it to her. When I got out, she'd already gotten in her car and was driving off. I needed a drive to clear my mind, so I quietly sat in my car and drove following her. She parked outside a yoga club and got out. She looked around herself and then started walking into an alley. She again looked around herself and got into another car. She hugged and kissed the driver and they drove off. I could hardly blink. I clenched my jaw and parked my car, got out and went inside the yoga club. Asked them about Marissa checking in and they denied giving me personal info. I said I was worried about her and insisted I was at least told if she were there. They told me they had no client with that name. I got back to my car and waited, and I don't know what came over me, but when that other car rolled in, I started making a video. A man got out and opened her door for her, hugged her, and kissed her, then slapped her, but as she joyously made her way to the parking lot. So much for yoga, Marissa. Before she could get to the parking lot, I left, so my dad cheated on my mom and he's getting cheated on now, karma. Dad has called me a few times, but I didn't pick up. Going to see what happens, cause all I want to do now is go and ask Marissa about it all. Should I update? Hey y'all, this is probably going to be the last update, I think, and I know it's a week late and y'all expected it to be sooner, but so much happened in this week. First, I actually managed to man up and go and confront Marissa. I went when Dad wasn't home. Ash was asleep. I asked her if she had yoga class that day. She said she had it every day, even on Sundays. She was in the kitchen cooking pasta. I asked her who her yoga instructor was. She took a random name. I asked her if that were a dude. She said no and laughed. Why would I take a boy, she said. I told her it was funny that she had a female one when the club she went to didn't have any female instructor. She told me I was mistaken, but her voice was caught off guard and her hands weren't stirring the pasta sauce anymore. I told her I joined the club yesterday and that's what they told me. She asked me how I knew where her club was. I told her I followed her the last time I'd visited. She dropped a spoon. I picked it up and she turned around. What are you getting at, she asked me. So I told her what I saw. She denied it as expected. I said I saw it with my own eyes. She shrugged and told me Dad would never believe me. I pulled out my phone and played the video and told her he'd believe his own eyes at least. She stood in shock and was speechless for a minute. Then her expressions calmed down and she continued to cook pasta. She said it didn't matter anymore. She was already planning for a divorce anyway. My eyes widened. This woman was despicable. Granted, my dad deserved all of it, but man, she's a snake. She told me that the guy she goes to meet at the club is her lover of 3 years now. They revived their romance when it was safe too. She said they'd fallen in love long ago, but at that time he was married to another woman whose father had hired him in his company. A lot was at stake, but Marissa and her lover decided that he'd choose to keep his marriage and settle his finances, then he'd divorce his wife and get with Marissa. But Marissa got pregnant, so then she was desperate to pin a guy down for support, as women should. That's how she decided to keep Dad. They were seeing each other off and on. But then Marissa met her lover and got pregnant, so she chose Dad and told him he had to do something about it, said he got cold feet, so she had to take it in her own hands, and that's when she spoke to Mom. Now her lover is a widower and owns a company. She's good to go. She said women need to do what they can kid and turned around with a smile. But her smile froze as she looked over my shoulder. Her smile was gone in the next moment. I turned around to find Dad in the doorway, fists balled and eyes red. He was shaking. Well then Dad woke Ash up and brought her to the kitchen. He asked her who her father was. She looked over at Marissa and shook her head. She told him she didn't care about blood, because she always knew him to be her dad. He ran his fingers through his hair and paced the floor. Over the next 2 days Marissa and Ash were told to leave his house. The divorce is in process. Ash and Marissa are staying at a shelter. Dad has asked me to find him a therapist and he's apologized a lot since. I forgive him every time. As with Marissa, her lover didn't take her in. He denies having any contact with her. I have the proof and Marissa has begged me for it. She's even asked me to think of Ash in her pregnancy. What can I say? Marissa, your kid, your problem. What should I do? Delete the video or hand it over? We'll update in the comments sometime later. Thanks for being with me. For the suggestions and support means a lot. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. My sister enables her kids' criminal behavior. Now they're ruining the neighborhood. And I called the cops when I came home from work. I noticed my shed door was open and the padlock that I used to keep it shut was broken. I had a lot of bags full of soda cans in there. I tend to drink a lot of soda, so I built up a lot of cans and I was going to cash them in at the bottle drop soon. There was more than just my cans missing from the shed too. I was missing some gardening tools, a machete, and a gas can. I went to check my security cameras and early in the morning, right after I left for work, I saw my 3 nephews break into my shed, using a hammer to smash the lock and taking the cans as well as the other stuff. I called my sister and she and her husband denied their kids did it, till I showed up at their house with the footage from my cameras. They were furious with their kids for robbing me and skipping school to do it. I got the other stuff back. The gas can was emptied though, but they'd already cashed all of the cans. I wanted the money from the cans, and my nephews had already spent it all on video games and junk food. I demanded to know how much they got from the cans, and it was nearly $200. I told my sister she now owes me over $200 for the cans and the broken padlock. My sister and Bill went from being angry at their kids to making excuses for them, and then being angry at me for wanting that money back when I know they have 3 kids and a mortgage. I said it was either that or I go to the police and press charges. They told me to get out, and I said they have 2 days to decide how to pay me back before I go to the cops. My nephews are thieves and have stolen from me before. That's why I got the cameras. What my nephews did was most definitely wrong. But I also know my sister and Bill can't really afford to pay me back. And they're blowing up my phone and calling me heartless for giving them the ultimatum when I know they are nearly broke after the holidays. Aita for doing that. Update 1. Well, I went to the police. I tried to work with my sister and Bill when I called them this morning because I didn't want to wait till after they were done with work to speak with them. Not only did they refuse any sort of suggested way of repaying me, they actually said that it was my fault for having the cans there to begin with. They said I tempted my nephews with the money. I was enraged and said I was done with them. Then they started blowing up my phone all over again. My eldest nephew sent me a picture of him holding a soda can hand and giving me the finger, so that was it. I went to the police station and filed the report, gave them a copy of the video footage of my nephew stealing from my shed. I gave them the broken lock they smashed, showed them all of the texts which were screenshotted and also given as evidence. Hell, I even gave them the photo my eldest nephew sent me of him flipping me off. I don't know if my nephews have been arrested yet, but I'm assured they will be. Perhaps some community service will change their attitudes. I did tell police that I found it worrisome that my nephews had taken the machete, but it was as I thought. They classified it as a tool, especially since they took a lot of other actual tools other than the machete. They also some gardening shears, a steel rake, 2 shovels, one of them being one of those folding camping ones, a full 2-gallon gas can, a cheap power drill I got for like $5 used, an electric hedge trimmer, and a small electric chainsaw that was also used. They didn't touch the lawnmower, weed whacker, extension cords, or the old radio I had in there. No idea why they took what they did, but I guess they figured they could resell them or something. But I got all of that back minus the gas that was in the gas can. No idea what they used it for, but it was old gas anyway. After they first broke into my shed, they took what they could by hand, and then they came back with some shopping carts that I'm guessing they also stole, but it took them a few trips to get all of the cans and they didn't bother to even try and close the door when they were done either way, though my nephews are now in trouble for trespassing and harassment. I'm sure either today or tomorrow my phone is going to be blowing up like mad when the cops come for those kids. But I said it was my hill to die on and I meant it. I don't even care if I get the money back now. They had their chance. I've already replaced the lock on the shed with a much stronger one, and the machete will no longer be kept in the shed. I've also talked to a few of my neighbors about what happened. They told me cans have actually been going missing around the neighborhood lately. If anybody had a bag of cans sitting out, it would get stolen. Can't say if my nephews were the culprits, but if they were, then they've been doing this for months. I've also spoken with my relatives and they're fed up with my sister and Bill too. So they're all on my side at least, which is good to know. I was worried they'd turn on me since I filed the police report. But no, I just got a lot of good for you. And it's about damn time those kids face some justice. I wasn't the only one in the family they stole from. Many in the comments tried to say I should offer that my nephews work off the $200. There's no way I was going to do that. The little shits hate doing any work they don't want to do and will just stand around griping and acting like the world is against them, and they'd have to be supervised the entire time, which is another thing I don't want to do. Plus, I banned them from my house for good reason. The theft started with food and snacks and then went on to DVDs and video games. That made me start putting my initials on cases and discs with permanent markers, so I was able to show when my nephews had taken something of mine. They tried the "oh, he let us borrow them" excuse a few times, but I always called and then made them return the stuff they took, which they always acted like I was a jerk for doing, and then when they were made to apologize to me each time, they were the fakest apologies I've ever heard. The final straw that banned my nephews from my house was when they used the spare hidden key to my house to get in and stole 3 six-packs of my favorite blood orange beer from my fridge along with raiding my kitchen for anything else they wanted. One of them took a dump in my bathroom and not only didn't flush, but also intentionally pissed on the floor. They tried to say it wasn't them, but I knew it was. The beer they stole was even hidden in their room. My sister and Bill barely punished them and basically gave me an equivalent to "boys will be boys." Then berated me when I said they and their kids were no longer welcome at my home ever again. And that's all why I got the cameras. When I had them installed, I told no one, which was a very smart idea because my nephews had no idea they were there when they broke into my shed. Guess I was their easiest target. When I can afford it, I plan to get more cameras inside my house too. Update 2. But my nephews were indeed arrested on Saturday. Police came to their house, and my sister and Bill were forced to let them in because they had a warrant. Apparently all 3 of my nephews went from being cocky little shits to crying like babies when they were being put in cuffs. I know this because a neighbor I'm acquainted with that's sort of friends with my sister was there to see it. And shortly after the arrest, my sister and Bill were blowing up my phone again. They weren't able to get their kids out of jail till Monday morning. And now the boys are being charged with larceny, willful destruction of property, vandalism, and harassment. The police took this whole case pretty seriously as there has been complaints about my nephews for some time, but nothing was proven until now. The past few months bags of cans have actually been going missing all over the area. Don't know if it was my nephews or not. They're likely suspects, and with word spreading of their arrest, let's hope other neighbors with security cameras come forward with more footage. My sister and Bill showed up at my house too. I refused to open the door and told them that this all happened because they are enablers who refused to hold their kids accountable for their actions. That made them just scream and pound on my door more till I threatened to call police on them too, and since I've done it already, they know I mean it now, so they left without any more trouble. But they went back to blowing up my phone. I didn't block my sister or Bill. Instead, I decided to just save all of the messages they send me because I've made the decision to take them to small claims court over this. I don't really need or want the money, and I've already replaced the destroyed padlock with a much better one. However, the kids aren't the only ones who need to be taught a lesson. In the end, I hope I put them in enough of a hole that they learn not to screw with me ever again. I also have the full support of my family on this. My parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, etc., they're all supporting me in this because my nephews have stolen from them too, and after banning my nephews from my house, some of them did the same. I'm going to push for my nephews to get community service, And the reason why isn't just because it's a good idea, but also because I know that they'll hate that the most. Whenever made to do any kind of work they don't want to do, they just stand around griping and act like the whole world is against them, so hardly anything ever gets done. Perhaps a few hundred hours of unpaid work will teach them some manners. They've been spoiled far too much. Update 3. Well, this is stupidly anticlimactic. I figured that my sister and Bill were going to dig their heels and even deeper after that's already gone down. But they actually caved. I filed a lawsuit against them in small claims for the actions of their kids. In the suit, I was asking for $500. This was for the stolen cans, the destroyed lock, the cost of the replacement lock, which was a much better and more expensive one, the cost of filing with the courts, and emotional damages for the harassment. A friend whose father is a lawyer gave me a free consultation and said I have a very strong case because of the camera footage I have of both my nephews stealing from me and of my sister and Bill pounding on my front door, plus all of the messages they sent me. When my sister and Bill were served, they called me freaking out. They said I couldn't do this to them, so I retorted that this is the price they are paying for not parenting their kids and letting them become entitled little thieves, and if they wish to speak to me again, it will either be when I see them in court or if they decide to pay me the $500 I'm suing for. Then I hung up on them. Well, yesterday evening I was having some friends over after work. We were just chilling out and watching a movie. None of us were in the mood for video games since we were tired from the day and we just wanted a chill evening. But then I got a knock at the door. When I looked outside, there was my sister and Bill, and they looked very unhappy. I opened the door but left the screen door shut, then asked them what they were doing at my house. They told me that they're tired of fighting because everyone is against them and fully admitted how badly they effed up by letting this go as far as they did and just wanted to make peace. My friends were standing in full view behind me, so there were witnesses to this. Bill then slid an envelope through a crack in the door that contained $500 in $50 bills. He said it was from his private savings account, then told me from now on they'll make sure my nephews are duly punished for their actions. They didn't ask me to drop the charges but pleaded with me to at least be lenient. I said I was only pushing for community service, which is pretty lenient, and if we cooperate for that, then hopefully the judge will agree. They sighed and said they'd cooperate if that's all I wanted, then left without making any sort of a fuss. My friends all congratulated me on holding my ground. Others in my family later did the same. That's when I found out from my parents that they actually threatened to disown my sister if she and her husband didn't make some changes for the better. So now they are. It may be a forced change, but it's the best we'll probably see out of them. My mom paid my sister and Bill a visit after they repaid me too. She told me that my nephews were not playing video games. In fact, every single video game-related thing was put away somewhere, and so was the TV that my nephews would game and watch movies on. All three nephews were in their rooms most of the time and were very rude and unwelcoming to their grandmother. But my sister claims they are dealing with the situation. So yeah, I've dropped the lawsuit now that I've been paid what I wanted, but my nephews are still going to court for theft and are now getting the parenting they should have been getting long ago. I've also been assured that they will not be coming near my house again anytime soon and are strictly only to be either at school or at home. My nephews won't be welcome anywhere near my house for a long time to come. My sister and Bill are now basically forced to do the parenting they should have already been doing, and everyone else on the family has been on my side about this because my nephews had basically gotten everyone to hate them. Update 4. To start off with, yes, I did get more cameras. One I installed right above the shed, so it looks like I've got the whole area covered. I want to say that my sister and Bill as well as my nephews have learned from this whole ordeal, but that's not entirely the case, especially for my eldest nephew, who just couldn't let go of wanting revenge on me, and he stupidly tried to get it. Here's what happened. They didn't get more than 100 hours each because I've been repaid by their parents when we settled out of court, so the judge pretty much fast-tracked the case. My nephews ended up picking up garbage and doing work around several local parks, and the man directing them I heard was a retired drill sergeant, so they had no fun whatsoever. My eldest nephew constantly showed his issues with authority and got into screaming matches with everyone who told him to work. His father had to be called over just to make the boy pick up a rake. The kid openly blamed me for his predicament, and his brothers were both initially on his side, but after a while they realized that he's just crazy and entitled and they no longer want any part of it, so my two younger nephews stopped following his lead because it finally clicked just how in the wrong they were. Problem is that my sister and Bill blamed me for the divide in their family, which didn't end well for them as no one in the family was on their side about it. Everything was put on them and their bad parenting, and without me to blame, they just became silent and bitter. Half the family don't want to associate with them, and now their own kids are divided because the eldest refuses to change. It got so bad that my eldest nephew resorted to something so incredibly dumb that you're not going to want to believe it. In the middle of the night, he sneaked out and assaulted my house with a pair of his dad's claw hammers. I say a pair because he literally had one in each hand. The first thing he did was start smashing the new lock on my shed, and it didn't break, but he heavily damaged it to the point it was no longer usable, and I had to later remove it with bolt cutters. He also did a lot of damage to the shed door with the hammer claws. I awoke to the sounds of the hammers and called the police after peeking out my bedroom window and seeing someone outside hitting the shed, though I didn't realize it was him at first because he had his face covered with a creepy-looking mask. He saw the bedroom lights come on and chucked one of the hammers through my window. There was broken glass everywhere, and I'm lucky I didn't cut my feet on any of it because I was barefoot. Then my nephew started beating on my back door with the remaining hammer. He did major damage breaking the knob and the window on the door and also tore into the door itself with a hammer claw. I was worried the door wouldn't hold out, so I yelled that the police were on their way and he took off before they arrived. The night vision on my camera showed it was him. He had a mask on but was wearing his school hoodie as well as his Nike shoes that were also pretty identifiable since his brothers don't have a pair like them. His fingerprints were also on the hammer he threw at my window. My nephews had already all been fingerprinted when they were arrested the first time, so police matched the ones on the hammer to him. When the cops came for my eldest nephew, he obviously denied it was him, but there's no one else it could have been. The other hammer was found in his room along with the clothes and mask he wore, all of which were taken as evidence. The mask was of a Star Wars character I was told is called the Grand Inquisitor. This time, though, his parents did nothing to try and protect him, and they didn't try to pass the blame on me either. They just let their son be taken away screaming. I wasn't there to see the arrest, but I was told by my sister that my eldest nephew was switching back and forth from crying that he didn't do anything wrong to screaming that it was all my fault and he had to get back at me. The boy had to go through a serious mental evaluation and was found to be potentially bipolar. Doesn't really excuse what he did though. Later on, when he was properly diagnosed as bipolar, he started blaming everything he did wrong on that and acted like he should be vilified just for getting treatment for it, but he ended up having a month-long stint in juvenile hall. They got my nephew properly medicated and he pleaded guilty to forego court again in exchange for more community service and mandatory counseling as well as probation. This time his dad came to my house and personally replaced the broken window and door, though he barely said a word to me while doing it. My two younger nephews are still excluding their older brother from pretty much everything, and he still hasn't apologized for attacking my home either. He's also unfortunately repeating a school year because of how badly his grades tanked, which his parents are still very unhappy about. My two younger nephews dropped by on their own in July to personally apologize to me. They said that they always just follow their brother's lead and he made everything they were doing seem so fun. But the punishments for the crimes are not worth the kind of fun they were having and they don't want anything to do with it anymore. They want their fun uncle back and asked if we could start over. I said we can, but they'll have to earn back my trust, which they happily agreed to. My eldest nephew had his 17th birthday a few months ago and basically got nothing, not even a cake. It was part of his punishment for what he'd done. I can only imagine how much money he's cost his parents in the past year alone. He led his brothers to steal from me and then destroyed my bedroom window and back door. I imagine in total with the lawsuit I'd previously filed and replacing both the door and window cost them over $1,000. Doors and windows are not cheap. Meanwhile, my youngest nephew had his birthday a month after that and got a new mountain bike among his gifts. This really upset my eldest nephew and he slashed the tires on the bike with a kitchen knife which landed him in even more trouble. I know a thing or two about fixing bikes, so I went out and bought new tubes and tires for the bike and put them on it so the bike is fine, and my nephew thanked me a lot for fixing it. My eldest nephew resorted to trying to run away because he wasn't being enabled anymore. He just walked out, got on his bike with a backpack full of stuff and rode off. His parents quickly reported him missing because he left a goodbye letter that basically blamed me and his bipolar for all his problems. In the letter he stated that he can't wait till he's 18 to get away from us all, so he was doing us a favor by getting rid of himself sooner, but he came back 3 days later without his bike or backpack and looking beat up. He wouldn't tell anyone what happened. We still don't know. But he was chewed out for continuously using me as a scapegoat for his personal issues because blaming me was the first thing he did after he got back. I didn't make him steal from me, I didn't make him attack my house, I didn't make him run away, that was all him, and he nearly ended up back in juvie for running off because he violated his probation, but he got off easy somehow. Currently he spends his days pretty much in his room when not in school or doing chores or going to counseling. He finished his community service, but his probation will last till he's 18. He got some lenience for being diagnosed as bipolar, but it couldn't get him off the hook, and believe me, he tried many times. Once they told him what was wrong with him, it became his excuse for everything, but plenty of people go their whole lives with that same mental condition and never do the kinds of things he did. I've been mending things with my 2 younger nephews, but I don't want to be around the eldest at all, and the feeling is clearly mutual on his part. I've only seen him once in person the past few months, and he glared at me with more hate than I've ever seen from anyone before stomping away. He can't paint me as the villain anymore without being called out on it, so there isn't much he can do other than just try and get through this. For the most part, he's totally shut down since school started. I'm told he barely speaks even at school. My other nephews tell me he's getting laughed at and ostracized, which I don't think is going to help him get better. My sister and Bill are also not on the best terms with me right now as well, but they can't exactly put any blame on me either. They know it was all on them and their bad parenting. I've basically forced them to be more active in their kids' lives, which they should have been doing already. They complain a lot of being tired from work and keeping an eye on their kids, so whenever we talk as of late it's always awkward and forced. They don't come to my house or me to theirs, but we do see each other at my parents' house and our mother demands we be civil there, which I have no problem with. My 2 younger nephews have regained most of their privileges. They got their TV and video games back, but my eldest nephew isn't allowed on them at all. I'm told he's got some electronic entertainment in his room, but what kind I don't know. I just know he spends most of his time in there unless he has to be somewhere else. My eldest nephew is also not welcome pretty much anywhere in the family anymore. I've recently heard from my parents that they don't even want to see him on Thanksgiving or Christmas Eve this year because they are sick of his behavior and petty thievery. I guess I can understand that, but even I feel it's a bit harsh. My sister and Bill do as well because they are threatening to boycott if he can't come to either holiday. I can't stand that kid and would not want him in my house either, so I can understand why they've made the decision, but I don't think excluding him from everything and everyone is going to make him better. It's going to take a long time for my eldest nephew to mend bridges, if they can even be mended at all. The way things stand, he may try running off again once he's of age unless the last time scared him too much to try it again. But hopefully things will get better for him in time if it's not too late to fix his behavior. I may not like him, but he's still my nephew and I care, but I'm kind of powerless to do anything. So for now the most I can do is just keep my nose out of it and offer support where I can. Update 5. I was hoping to have a better update for everyone after the holidays, but things didn't really get better. They started to and then went downhill again. Took some time, but everything is more or less okay now. I didn't post earlier because I thought it better to wait. I wrote most of this months ago but decided I'd wait a little longer to see if the situation would improve, but then I waited too long and just forgot until recently. So here's hopefully the final update of the devil snake who tempted his nephews with a shed full of cans. I do a recap, but there's just too damn much for that, so if you want to know the rest you'll have to go back and read it. To start this post off with, last year my sister and Bill went to Thanksgiving at Bill's parents' house instead of with my parents. My eldest nephew wasn't exactly on his best behavior over there either, but he didn't cause any trouble. At least that's what they told everyone. My sister and Bill also had a long talk with our parents about how excluding my nephew would not help his mental state at the moment, and I also backed them on this because with the way things were going all my nephew would feel is hate. So my parents relented and let him come to Christmas Eve. I of course got him a gift, but because I wanted to help him mentally get better, in early December I went out and bought him a used metallic green mountain bike at the local secondhand store. It needed a little bit of work but was an excellent buy for $30. I also learned that since his good backpack was stolen, he was using an old one that belonged to one of his brothers, so I grabbed a used one at the same secondhand store for about $5. I fixed up the bike and washed the backpack, and when I presented them both to him on a Sunday, he seemed completely shocked I'd give him anything, and it also made him really awkward, but he took them both with a look that said thanks and started using them right away to go to and from school like he did with his old bike and backpack. My sister and Bill were also pretty damn shocked I gave him gifts, let alone replace the stuff that was stolen from him when he ran away after he attacked my house with hammers, but the gifts had the effect I was hoping for. I was no longer the object of his rage. He really had been looking for any excuse to make me out to be the vile snake that ruined his life, but I'm not. When I next saw him, it was at the family Christmas Eve party, and while there my sister and Bill made him apologize for putting all his anger on me. They loomed over him like shadows while he talked to me. He was told to look me in the eye repeatedly, and in his apology he admitted that it wasn't my fault he was arrested. He egged me on, he stole from me, and he damaged my property, and he won't do it again. We shook hands, and he didn't make any trouble at the party at all. But his parents were like his shadows that entire evening. They didn't leave him alone at all. They might as well have had him on a leash. It was awkward, but I can understand why they'd put a lot on the line just so he could be allowed to come to Christmas. At New Year's, though, things took a dive. My eldest nephew stole a bottle of champagne from his parents and drank it all fast while locked in the bathroom before anyone could stop him. He'd asked for a drink of it prior and was told he was too young, so he stole one of the bottles and chugged it. We didn't know this until then, but apparently he'd been stealing alcohol for some time before his first arrest, and he kept a hidden stash somewhere that slowly ran out as he only touched it little by little and even sold some of it to other kids in the neighborhood. He didn't get in massive trouble, just got sent to his room for the night after he said he stole the booze because he was just really craving it and it was New Year's. His brothers admitted to their parents about his stash and showed them where it was hidden. It was a plastic tub in the crawl space under the house. When confronted about how they got all the alcohol, my two younger nephews admitted to following their brother's lead and only stole one beer at a time or poured some hard alcohol from its original bottle into another bottle little by little. And then the biggest bomb, they had been sneaking into other people's houses and doing the same thing all over the neighborhood. Their way of breaking in was to look for unlocked doors and windows, no houses with dogs because they'd bark, and the youngest would crawl in through windows because he was the smallest, and then he'd unlock the doors to let his brothers in. They made sure not to steal anything big from inside the houses, so they could come back multiple times. But after they got arrested last year, they realized they didn't enjoy being thieves anymore and were just following their brother's lead like they'd said before. Of course, the kids were in trouble for not admitting any of that until then, and despite trying to keep it secret, we still got around somehow. It confirmed some of the suspicions of the neighbors. Considering how good my nephews were at being cat burglars, you'd think they'd have been more mindful of cameras, or perhaps they just figured old Uncle Yam would never get cameras, but after my nephews were exposed as thieves, a few of my and my sister's neighbors got cameras too. The punishment for admitting how they stole stuff was minor for my nephews. It was kind of redundant for the eldest because he's still in trouble with being on probation and whatnot, and he hadn't tried to steal anything else until he took the bottle of champagne. My Bill started giving him lots of mint gum to chew to help with his cravings because it was what he used to help cut back on drinking himself, and it kinda helped. Bill also started keeping all his booze locked in a padlocked fridge in the garage. He suspects his son tried to get into it. Once all of that aside, things didn't seem so bad until my eldest nephew got in a fight at school in February. I'm told he didn't start it, but another kid picked on him until they started swinging fists. He got his two front teeth knocked out by the bully when he got his face slammed into a locker. There ended up being a reason why for this attack. My younger nephews told me their older brother had a number of targets to pick on at school before getting arrested. He was apparently the typical bully people picture when they think of one. He stole things from other kids, aimed for the small and the weak, smacked them around when no one was looking, and on more than one occasion used a small knife to stab bike tires. Well, the big brother of a kid he'd previously picked on went after him, and that boy messed him up. Both of his top front teeth were knocked out and his nose was broken. He had to be taken to the hospital, and an emergency oral surgeon had to put his teeth back in, which also required special braces to hold them in place. His nose also had to be reset, and he was put in a neck brace. The poor boy didn't want to be seen by anyone for months. No one pressed charges. Believe me, I've asked many times as to why not, but the other kids' parents paid at least half of the cost for my nephew's treatments for his teeth and nose through their insurance. That's what they told me anyway. My sister and Bill's health insurance sucked for covering the rest though, and they had a high copay. They didn't bother to file anything because they didn't want to be in court again, and the other parents only paid as much as they did because they didn't want to be sued. I contributed a bit to the cost too. I still had the $500 they given me in cash after I sued them and decided to give it back to them to help ease the cost a little. They won't tell me how much it cost to get my nephew's nose fixed and 2 front teeth put back in. But after that I think they may have had no savings left. When I saw my nephew after the incident, his face was messed up and his front teeth were wired in place. He refused to return to school and did all his remaining lessons online with a school-provided laptop. The boy who beat him up, I was told, received nothing more than a 2-week suspension. I won't deny I was upset, but at the same time I know this only happened because my nephew was a bully to other kids. What goes around does still eventually come around. We're in summer now and my eldest nephew is still a shut-in most of the time. He'll go out bike riding alone for an hour or two, but other than that he generally keeps to himself in his room. There have been talks for my sister and Bill of moving closer to his parents after their son's probation is up, and I don't blame them. Practically the whole neighborhood hates them now, so they want out as soon as they can afford it, which unfortunately may take another year or so to pull off. I have been spending more time with my 2 younger nephews and they are doing a lot better now. They're more respectful and have been allowed back in my home. Nothing has gone missing and I enjoy spending time with them watching movies and playing games. They've become good kids again, and they're trying to make up for their mistakes. On the rare occasion I see my eldest nephew, he is not cold to me anymore. He even brought his bike to me for repairs once. But he's a boy of few words now, almost stoically silent these days. I do know that when he's 18 he wants to be far away from here. We've suggested trade school and he's not against the idea. Beyond that I've been doing my best not to overstep as an uncle. So that's it. After all this time I may have nothing more to write here. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Almost cost me all of my $900,000 on divorce. But I wrecked my cheating wife in court with shocking proof. I work as a primary school teacher, so my work schedule is quite predictable. I have set hours at school and Tuesday afternoons are reserved for staff meetings, which typically run until 6 p.m. As a result, I would usually be home by 7 p.m. My wife, Terry, whom I've been married to for 31 years, often felt tired on Tuesday evenings due to her gym workouts. So I often took the initiative to prepare dinner while she showered and took care of other household tasks. However, one day, our school principal surprised us by canceling the staff meeting. It was still only 3:30, and on a whim, I decided to head home early and get a head start on preparing dinner. I thought I might also take care of some remaining household chores before Terry returned from the gym. Lately, I had noticed her growing more distant, and I hoped that a candlelight dinner and a relaxed atmosphere, free from the usual household logistics, might rekindle our intimacy and passion. Our marriage had been going through a tough period, often revolving around financial issues. I observed Terry becoming increasingly distant from me. She seemed to want more control over various aspects of our lives and would become quite stubborn and argumentative when things didn't go her way. Despite these challenges, I considered myself a patient man. Today, I got home just like any other day, parking in our garage, which was quite a distance from our house. We had positioned the garage this way when our children were little to ensure their sleep remained undisturbed by car noises. Their sleep was precious, not just for their health, but for our sanity too. It gave us some quiet time to recharge while they slept soundly. So I parked and took a usual stroll up to our 2-story house. I noticed Terry's car in the garage, but it was a common sight on her workout days because she preferred taking the bus to the gym. As I entered the back door, my initial thought was that it was time to tidy up the space. I had a knack for fixing things around the house, so all the door hinges and moving parts were well-maintained and noise-free. Nothing irritated us more than loud doors or squeaky hinges. However, the first thing that caught my attention was Terry's handbag still sitting on the kitchen counter. I knew she'd be upset about it. Terry was meticulous about keeping her person nearby no matter where she was in the house. This unexpected sight shifted my focus, and I began to notice other unusual things. Her gym attire, mainly a snug leotard and a sizable towel, lay on the floor near the kitchen counter. Then I heard sounds coming from our bedroom upstairs. I entertained the possibility that Terry might have fallen ill suddenly and was upstairs. I cautiously and quietly ascended the carpeted stairs, almost tripping over a pair of men's shoes left on the steps. Those shoes definitely weren't mine, and neither were the pants, shirt, tank top, and socks scattered along the rest of the stairs. They were mixed in with Terry's underwear, her exclusive ones that only made an appearance on special occasions like our wedding anniversaries. I came to a standstill. My skin grew clammy, and my blood pressure plummeted, causing my heart to momentarily skip a beat. I had to sit down on the stairs to collect myself. My disbelief turned to anger, an emotion I rarely feel. Typically, I'm composed and controlled, a result of years as a teacher managing 30 children daily, but now that composure eluded me. Adrenaline surged through my veins, and I felt anger like never before. I had never even been in a real fight. These emotions were entirely foreign to me. Amidst these strange feelings, curiosity drove me to cautiously climb the stairs and enter our shared closet. There were 2 doors in front of me, one leading to the bedroom and the other to the upstairs bathroom. To reach the bedroom, I had to pass through the ensuite bathroom, which then connected to our spacious walk-in closet, and from there, I could access our bedroom. At the wardrobe door leading to the bedroom, I had a clear view of what lay beyond. The closet door was slightly open, positioned just right for me to see the bed. It was like watching a scene from a horror movie, and I couldn't tear my eyes away. All the while, I had been hearing those moans and grunts, but now I was overwhelmed with an intense mix of anger and disbelief. I grabbed my phone and started recording what I was witnessing. I knew I would need this footage later to convince myself that it was all too real and I wasn't trapped in some dreadful nightmare. It would serve as evidence for the impending confrontation with Terry. My gaze remained fixed on the painful spectacle of betrayal unfolding before me. This was my wife, my lover, my life partner, someone I had placed unwavering trust in. She was the mother of our grown children, a woman in her 40s who worked out, engaged in charitable activities, and professed her love for me above all else. This was betrayal in its rawest, most fundamental form. I had to stop recording and quietly descend the stairs. I left our property and began walking, not knowing where I was headed, but I eventually found myself in a park miles away from home. There, I splashed some water on my face, sat down, and watched the recording on my phone. I turned the volume down to avoid alarming the children playing nearby. The destruction of my life and everything I had grown to consider normal was right there on my phone screen, captured in digital reality. It was the wreckage of our marriage, and it was at that moment that I finally let the tears flow. Update 1. It was around 7 p.m., my usual return time on staff meeting days. I found myself back at home, standing at the back door, and Terry noticed something amiss immediately. My disheveled appearance, red eyes, and pale complexion were clear indicators. She asked with genuine concern, "Honey, what's wrong? You look really pale. Is everything all right? I'll get you a drink. Are you okay?" Her eyes conveyed her worry. I couldn't bring myself to tell her the real reason for my distress. In a shaky voice, I replied, "Not really. Something upset my stomach. Maybe lunch." Terry responded, "Okay, honey, but take a container with you to bed. If you puke, it might be on the nice clean sheets." Those sheets, once clean, were now stained by something far worse than last night's dinner: betrayal. I replied a bit more firmly, "It's okay. I will sleep in the spare room until I feel better," and made my way to the spare downstairs bedroom. That's how it went for the next few days. Terry continued her usual routine, seemingly oblivious to my discomfort. I was on autopilot with work, and I kept sleeping in the spare bedroom, using the excuse of potential illness. I knew I couldn't sustain that excuse for long. Eventually, I moved back into our bedroom, but sleeping in that place of betrayal was a challenge. Terry carried on as if nothing had changed. When Monday arrived, I had made a decision about what to do next. I needed to find out if this was an ongoing affair or a one-time incident. I informed my principal that I would be undergoing an unexpected medical procedure the following day, and he arranged for a substitute teacher to take my class Tuesday morning. I left home as usual, but parked a few streets away from our neighborhood and walked back to our street. I knew the rear entrances to the neighboring yards near our house. I proceeded with caution, ensuring I wouldn't be seen by any neighbors, and made my way to our garage located at the back of the house. There, I changed into casual attire, soft noiseless socks suitable for walking quietly. Then it became a waiting game. I recalled that there was no extra car at home when I unexpectedly returned last Tuesday. Therefore, I couldn't rely on the sound of a car arrival to alert me to any visitors. They must have walked here. I stealthily navigated our gardens until I reached a spot where I could observe our front door while remaining concealed by the hedges and bushes we had planted for privacy from the road. I waited. Terry could be heard going about her usual tasks, completely unaware of my presence. Her confidence in the routine proceeding as normal was evident. Kitchen duties, washing up, and operating the dishwasher, followed by activities in the living room like vacuuming and dusting, continued until approximately 11:30. Terry then headed upstairs. I could faintly hear the sound of the shower, followed by a period of silence, and then the flushing of the toilet. She returned downstairs about 45 minutes later, opened the front door, leaving it ajar so that any potential visitor wouldn't hesitate. I didn't have to wait long. Around 12:30, he arrived. I didn't know who he was, but he had walked in from the left side of our front gate. My phone recorded about 10 seconds of video, capturing side profiles and even an almost direct view of his face. He didn't hesitate. He entered and proceeded through the door. The next words I heard sent shivers down my spine. "Hey lover, I hope you're dressed for a big workout again." Terry's response was, "Of course, you always love it when I wear these. I sometimes wonder if it was these that attracted you to me in the first place, or maybe it was these." I had seen enough to confirm the ongoing affair. Their familiarity suggested it wasn't a one-off. As they moved to the bedroom, I retreated to the garage trying to compose myself. With my heart pounding, I grappled with the burning questions. Who is this man? I doubted a future intimate connection with her. I saw no signs of protection, raising concerns about potential risks if she was with others. I pondered why she never discussed her feelings. I remembered Terry's 2-year gym sessions nearby, a place where she bonded with local married women and engaged in charity events. Perhaps the gym held answers to our issues. Update 2. Being a teacher, I had access to computers, printers, and other resources. I decided to begin my investigation by printing out profile pictures from my phone footage to figure out who was involved. Maybe that would eventually lead me to the where and when of the situation. Finding out who didn't take much effort. On the following Thursday, Terry had her regular gym session, and I suggested that I join her to see if I might want to become a member too, especially since I had a break from school due to midterm. Terry wasn't too keen on the idea and gave excuses like, "It's just a group of married ladies, and we mostly chat during the session," or some other weak reasons. I persisted and managed to accompany her to the gym on the next Thursday. As I walked into the gym, it felt like a scene out of an old Western film where everyone turns to stare when a stranger enters the saloon. All eyes were on me, and I noticed some hushed conversations among the ladies. Terry brushed it off, explaining that they weren't used to seeing her with someone during her usual gym sessions. The workout started with the usual warm-ups and stretching, followed by about an hour and a half of rotating between exercise stations to target different muscle groups. I tried to keep up, but I had to take a break about 45 minutes in. My blood sugar was dropping, and I knew I needed to eat something sweet soon. I did that, and Terry understood. After grabbing some jelly beans and sitting in a nearby chair, I began to pay closer attention to Terry. It was evident that she was quite nervous, frequently glancing toward the staff area where the instructors enter the main hall. I also took a closer look at the gym itself. It had the typical layout you'd find in gyms worldwide, with exercise stations scattered around the room and wall mirrors at each station so participants could check their form and muscle definition. I decided to explore the gym a bit more and noticed a wall near the hall exit with staff information. It was a way to pass the time while waiting for Terry. I glanced at the top photo, which featured a woman who seemed to be in great shape but had an age that was hard to determine. I thought to myself, Miss Elizabeth W.S., director and owner. Below her photo were her contact number and hours of availability. There were 3 more photos below hers, 2 women and 1 man. It was at this point that I froze, realizing that he was Terry's lover. This man was the one involved with my wife with her enthusiastic consent, it seemed. I read his description, Mr. Philip, head of exercise regime planning and personal body training. As I made a mental note of his phone number, I noticed that Terry was no longer at the station I had last seen her. I returned to my seat and carefully examined each station, searching for my wife. After some searching, I finally spotted her engaged in what seemed like a desperate conversation with a man partially obscured by some powerlifting equipment. He appeared to be near the entrance to the staff area and had clearly been prevented from entering, presumably by Terry. She gestured for him to leave and hurried back to the station where she was supposed to be. She hadn't noticed that I had observed her absence in conversation. I was seething, an emotion I wasn't accustomed to. By the time Terry returned to my location, it was evident that I wasn't feeling well. She asked, "Are you okay? Did it take a while for your blood sugar to recover?" I replied, "Yeah, I'm fine now. Are you ready to go?" Before she could respond, Miss WS made an announcement over the gym's PA system. She explained that tonight's usual final exercise session wouldn't happen because Mr. Bondi suddenly fell ill and had to leave. This news was met with groans and sighs from most of the women present, as it seemed Mr. Bond's session was a highlight for many of them. I thought to myself, this requires investigation. As I glanced at Terry, she remained silent when the announcement was made, but she appeared almost relieved. Terry quickly said, "Let's go," as she gathered her towel and handbag from the area where everyone stored their belongings during the workout. We were just leaving when one of the ladies, whom I didn't initially recognize, approached Terry. "It's such a shame that Phil couldn't finish the session as usual tonight," she commented. Terry replied, "True," and headed for the car in a manner that clearly signaled to the lady that she didn't want to discuss it at that moment. "Okay, see you, Terry," said dismissively. She got into the car faster than I had ever seen her do before. The ride home was quiet, with Terry appearing relaxed. She had her head tilted back, eyes closed, and seemed to be deliberately taking slow breaths. I couldn't help but notice these changes in her behavior. Perhaps now, in her seemingly relieved state, I could learn more about what was going on. "So, that was quite an interesting session, dear," I remarked. "The workout stations seem to be set up really well. No wonder you're looking so fit and trim." "Thanks, honey," she replied. "You're absolutely right. They offer an extensive program and I enjoy going there. The ladies are friendly too. It's just a shame about Mr. Bont." I prodded further. "You mean Boney?" she corrected, a bit too quickly. Philip Boney. He usually wraps up every session with an exercise routine that really challenges everyone, pushing their bodies to the limit. It was disappointing that he wasn't there tonight. Inside, I couldn't help but think, she's fully committed to this lie. I knew exactly how far Mr. Bondi was pushing her body, but all I said was, "HM. Maybe next Thursday he'll be feeling better." I couldn't shake the thought of the upcoming intimate encounter between my wife and Mr. Bonnie next Thursday. It was time to get down to business. During the next school week, I had pickup duty. For those unfamiliar with it, this is when teachers oversee the area where parents pick up their kids by car after school. It's usually a chaotic scene, with kids eager to head home, chat with their friends, and spot their parents all at once. For parents, it's a time of patience as they navigate through the stop-and-go car queue, hoping their child is ready when they reach the front. To my surprise, near the end of pickup time, a car pulled up, and the driver was the lady who had tried to talk to Terry at the gym the previous night. "Hi," she greeted me. "I'm sorry, but I'm new to this whole pickup thing, and I completely lost track of time. Is my son Timothy here?" As teachers, we're used to this, especially when someone is new to the school. So I assured her that I'd go find Timothy while my fellow teachers supervised the remaining kids. I located Timothy near his classroom, chatting with another staff member's child. "Hey, Tim," I said. "Your mom's here to pick you up. Come with me to the pickup area." He seemed a bit puzzled by this. He was in the last year of primary school and didn't strike me as the type to forget about pickups. "That's odd," he remarked. "Mom is usually occupied with her gym instructor on Friday afternoons. She often picks me up late. At my previous school, she sometimes didn't arrive until around 5:30. The moment I heard gym instructor, My suspicions grew stronger. I continued the conversation, trying to stay composed and casual. Ah, it's good to see your mom taking care of her health. Exercise is a crucial part of a healthy lifestyle. Do you happen to know the instructor's name? I hoped the response wouldn't confirm my fears. Oh, his name is Bounty or something like that, replied Timothy. He also works at a local gym and often gives private lessons at people's homes. That's what I want to do when I grow up. Mom really enjoys her workouts with him on Friday evenings. She's so relaxed and looks radiant by the time we get home. It's fantastic. Fridays are always takeout nights because Mom rarely has time to cook. No way, I thought. This Bondi guy is involved with more people than just my wife. I walked Timothy back to his car, where his mom expressed her gratitude for our concern. No problem, I said. It's all part of the service. By the way, I don't believe we've met before. I'm Gerard Diaz. The kids call me Mr. D for short. Nice to meet you. I shook her hand, and she introduced herself. Hi, I'm Mary Jones. I remember seeing you at the gym last Thursday. I was there with my wife Terry. Sorry she seemed rushed when leaving. Mr. Bonnie's absence seemed to disrupt everyone's routine that night. At that moment, her entire demeanor changed dramatically. While previously she had been an apologetic parent picking up her child from school, she suddenly turned pale and guarded. She appeared almost trembling as she said, Yes, all right, I'll see you again, Mr. Downs. Goodbye," and quickly drove off. Update 3. It was time to chart my future, something I believed I had already outlined together with my then-partner Terry. This future appeared grim, featuring only me and possibly no one else. Definitely not Terry. My anger led me down a path I had never imagined traversing. The path of revenge. I began to meticulously review all the vital, yet often overlooked details that are a part of a couple's everyday life. Questions like, who is responsible for paying the bills? Which insurance company do we use? What are our utility bills? From which account do we settle various bills? And when? As my database of this information began to expand, I discovered that we had only a small amount left to pay on our mortgage, and my superannuation account had grown impressively to $900,000. I couldn't help but express gratitude for our teachers' union, which had insisted on making compulsory super contributions a part of a teacher's basic employment conditions. After conducting thorough online research without Terry's knowledge, I reluctantly concluded that there was no escaping the fact that we would need to evenly divide all our assets. Our children were now financially independent. We did have a substantial sum saved in a cash account, around $30,000, designated for a planned overseas trip. Unfortunately, that trip was no longer on the horizon. My initial step would be to deplete that account as swiftly as possible before Terry became aware that I had uncovered her betrayal. I discreetly made several household appliances suddenly malfunction. I would disconnect a wire here and there when Terry wasn't at home. Then I'd claim that Mr. So-and-so had come to fix the particular appliance, charging a certain amount in cash, which was slightly less than his stated price. I would secretly stash away this cash and then repair the appliance. Through this method, I managed to squirrel away about $20,000. I also purchased tools and such, always paying with cash, showed them to Terry, and then returned them the next day for a cash refund. I admit it was deceitful, but the values of honesty and trustworthiness had already eroded in our relationship due to Terry's actions. The whole situation was turning me into someone I never thought I could be. A liar. Terry's Thursday afternoon workouts with Bonnie continued, and I no longer attempted to maintain any kind of sexual relationship with her. We simply coexisted as two housemates would. Gradually, my personal belongings began to disappear into boxes in the garage. Terry rarely ventured into the garage, so she didn't notice the rearrangement. Her car was usually parked in front of it, and she was content to leave the garage as my own space. She did question the absence of some of my personal items from the shelves once, though. I kept postponing it, explaining that I accidentally broke things or no longer had a use for them. Terry was fine with these responses, mainly because most of my belongings didn't fit her preferred color scheme or the desired ambience of the room. When most of my items were cleared away in this manner, it didn't significantly change the atmosphere in the house. It made me realize how much I had yielded to Terry's influence in many aspects of our life together. I withdrew as much of my superannuation as I could and purchased a small house on the town's outskirts. It was exceptionally compact, with only 2 bedrooms and a tiny yard, but it had a garage and was conveniently located near my workplace at the school. What made it even better was that the remaining mortgage balance allowed me to comfortably manage the monthly payments even on half of my salary. This wasn't a grand mansion by any means. It's astounding how great a deal you can find if you're willing to forego the allure of flashy, popular neighborhoods. My separation plans were underway. I gradually moved my personal belongings into the new house. Furniture wasn't a problem, as I could easily find second-hand or pre-owned pieces at thrift stores. It felt like my life was pre-loved, once cherished but now forgotten, relying on charity for any value. It was time for those involved to receive their just rewards. I reconnected with Mary Jones when she approached me during a school pickup. I was alone with her son Timothy, waiting for her when she arrived. She looked distressed. Her eyes hinted at recent tears. As a teacher, I was trained to pick up on these cues, giving insight into students' lives and their struggles. "Mr. D, can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked anxiously. "Of course, since no one else is arriving. Just stay parked there and come over to my usual spot," I replied. I referred to the benches around the school as my office. She parked her car while Timothy played with his soccer ball, and we sat together on the bench near the pickup area. "I'm not sure how to begin what I need to tell you," she started. "I'm uncertain about how much you know regarding the gym. You saw it." I looked at her intently and replied cautiously, "I know that Terry, my wife, enjoys going there, and it's been beneficial in helping her stay fit and active." She hesitated, clearly struggling to speak, and then continued, "There are things you should know about what happens there." Trying to get to the point swiftly, I asked, "Is it related to Philip Bont?" She responded vehemently, "You have no idea how much it involves that pig." I said, "I might have an idea, but please go ahead and tell me." She confidently said, "He's a player, targeting many of the regular women there." When I asked how she knew, she replied, tears in her eyes, "I was one of them until last week. We met every Friday at 12:30. She paused, looking up as if reliving those moments. I too looked away, reminded of those sessions, though not with fondness. She apologized. "I'm sorry for sharing this. I genuinely enjoyed what he was doing to me while it lasted. It was only when he had someone else taking my place during that time that he abruptly ended it, offering no explanation, just a sorry, no more. I had actually believed we might have a future. I'm divorced, and I miss the regular affection of a married relationship, so I was excited about experiencing it again, this time with him. I couldn't have been more wrong. I was completely shocked by her candidness. How could she think it was appropriate to share all of this with me? She must be really upset." Trying to provide some comfort, I responded a bit too hastily, "Marriage relationships aren't always what they seem." She looked at my face and noticed the pain and anguish in my expression. "You already know, don't you?" she asked slowly, shaking her head in disbelief. "You already know that he's been involved with Terry, your wife." I admitted, "Yes, I knew, Mary. Thank you for sharing this, though." I struggled to conceal the bitterness in my voice. "But I've already set things in motion regarding the whole situation. I genuinely believe in karma, and I think it might catch up with him soon. That guy has to face the consequences," Mary practically shouted. "He doesn't care about who he hurts or how, as long as he satisfies his sexual ego, something he can brag about to his buddies at the bar. If you want my help to get back at him, just let me know. That guy has to pay, and he should pay dearly." She called her son over and departed. I sat there deep in thought for quite some time. Update 4. I found a measure of relief when Mary shared her story with me. For a while, my revenge plan felt like sour grapes stemming from my inability to salvage my marriage. I realized it required deeper consideration. I began to ponder just how many other women he might be involving from the gym. It was time to gather concrete evidence. I couldn't help but be amazed by the man's stamina, but I suppose even the devil doesn't tire. I discovered that he worked at the gym every day except on Mondays when the gym was closed. I recalled the phone number posted on the gym's wall. Using the telecom's white pages, I traced the number back to an address not more than 3 blocks away from our own. It explained how that scoundrel could conveniently walk over to our place to engage in affairs with my soon-to-be ex-wife. I told Terry that I'd be going for a walk each day around 5 p.m., claiming my specialist recommended it. Fortunately, Terry had no interest in joining me, and she knew it wouldn't interfere with her liaisons, so it all went smoothly. During my first evening walk, I headed straight to Bonnie's address and observed that he lived in a ground-floor apartment among several similar units. His car was absent, so I lingered nearby to track his return. He consistently left our house well before 6 o'clock, making it likely for him to arrive around that time. As expected, he walked into his apartment right before 6 o'clock. This occurred every day I could go for a walk, except for my staff meeting day when I couldn't walk. I suspected he followed this pattern each day the gym was open. Did he have a different woman to rendezvous with on each of these days? I aimed to find out by progressively starting my walks earlier to monitor his daily movement. I decided to take a whole week off from school for this specific purpose. I went to an electronics store and purchased the necessary equipment. This included a discreet long-range listening device, not the one that resembles a satellite dish. I also bought voice and motion-activated cameras with full-color HD capabilities, 5 of them to be precise, to ensure I had enough storage space for digital evidence. I acquired an extra portable hard drive for my computer. After purchasing these items on Monday, I proceeded to install one of the cameras in Bond's apartment. Fortunately, his place wasn't overspacious, more like a one-bedroom apartment with a generous living and kitchen dining area. One camera sufficed to cover everything except his bedroom. Getting it into his bedroom was a breeze. I simply waited for him to head to the gym and retrieved his apartment keys from where he carelessly left them under the doormat. He couldn't have been less imaginative. After ensuring the camera functioned correctly, I departed. Now, whenever he made a movement or a sound in his apartment, the camera, equipped with a microphone, would activate and live stream both video and audio to my computer, where it was also securely stored with date stamps. It began operating as soon as Bondi returned home on Monday night, capturing clear footage of him enjoying a takeout meal in front of his television before retiring to bed around 9 p.m. On Tuesday, I waited until the gym had closed and then entered through the back door, which is often overlooked during the pre-closing checks in most stores. Fortunately, luck was on my side. I strategically placed the next camera in the private room located at the back where clients usually undergo personal health assessments. This was the same room where Bonnie often conducted sessions with his private clients. I couldn't help but question the kind of person I had become, installing cameras in other people's spaces, essentially spying. I wondered where this would lead. By Wednesday, I seized the opportunity when Terry left for groceries and discreetly positioned the 3rd and 4th cameras in our bedroom and living area. Upon reviewing the footage from Tuesday, I was both surprised and unsurprised by what I observed and heard. Given the context, Bonnie woke up and promptly left, only to return later with breakfast. I couldn't help but think, lazy guy, can't even make his own breakfast. He remained home until the gym opened and left at 10:30. During this time, he made an intriguing phone call. Julie, hi, it's Phil. Is he gone yet? Pause. Okay. See you at 12:30 at your place. Make sure to wear what I mentioned. No, I'll be careful. No one will see me enter your place. Did you say he was going for 3 days? All right, maybe I can come on Thursday and Friday as well. We'll talk this afternoon, lover. After that, he ended the call and left with a noticeable spring in his step. I couldn't help but wonder how he planned to explain this to Terry. On Thursday, I set up shop in the garage with my computer, eagerly awaiting the unfolding events. Almost immediately, Bont's camera feed appeared on my screen. He had woken up, gone out for breakfast again, and returned to make a phone call. It was Terry's phone he dialed, and the camera streamed her side of the conversation as well. Hey, it's Phil. How's my favorite slot feeling today? Phil, don't talk like that on the phone. You never know who could be listening. Luckily, my husband has gone to work. See you at 12:30 as usual. Update 5. Mary, the parent from school, seemed enthusiastic about helping in any way she could, so I asked her to compile a list of women that scoundrel was involved with or had been involved with in the past. She tackled this task with enthusiasm, and within a week, she had names and addresses. To my shock and dismay, Terry's name was on that list. By this point, I had nearly severed all ties to her house, which had lost its emotional value and become a mere dwelling. Terry did comment once on how it felt strangely emptier lately. I simply explained that I was diligently decluttering my belongings. She accepted that explanation as it didn't affect her possessions and even provided her more space. I had also moved the garage items to my new house. To complete my departure, I only needed a 20-minute effort to gather my remaining belongings and drive away in my car. I consulted with a divorce attorney, and all the necessary divorce documents were prepared and ready to be served promptly. The financial aspects were sorted out. Our savings for a vacation were completely emptied, with the funds transferred into my personal account. I carefully kept all the receipts for the fictitious purchases neatly organized in a folder, just in case they were needed as evidence. I adjusted the beneficiaries of my superannuation fund to our children and withdrew any available funds. I established separate bank accounts, credit cards, and insurance policies in my name alone. Car's car, its registration, and insurance were all transferred solely into her name, making her entirely responsible for it from now on. Unfortunately, I had no control over the house, so I had to rely on the decisions of the courts. I purchased a new mobile phone, registered under my name alone, and ensured that it had an unlisted number. The old phone was deactivated. I assembled a package of information for each husband or partner of the women listed by Mary. Each package included details about when and where that scoundrel had been involved with their partners. It also contained his name and address. Additionally, I provided the address of the sexual health clinic in our town, as it appeared that most of these encounters were unprotected. I sent a detailed letter to the owner of the gym, suggesting that it was an appropriate time to have a serious discussion with her head instructor. On our kitchen table, I left the divorce papers, printed photos from the video surveillance of that scoundrel and Terry, and DVDs of their encounters. Beside this bundle, I placed my wedding ring, cut in half and covered in unpleasant substances. The accompanying note read, "Terry, I left you this damaged ring covered with the same mess that symbolizes what happened to our marriage. Please refrain from contacting me unless it's through the attorney mentioned in the divorce papers. I've requested the school to prohibit your access to the school premises, so please avoid trying to reach me there. Causing disturbances on school grounds can lead to swift police intervention. I've also informed our children about my actions to ensure there's no confusion about why this breakup occurred. Heard I've sent copies of the DVDs to them, so there can be no false narratives about who initiated the separation." Update 6. I drove to my new house and waited for the fallout, which came with full force. Somehow, the local newspapers caught wind of a scandal at a nearby gym. The owner had no choice but to close the business and leave town. Meanwhile, a former gym instructor was discovered in a downtown back alley. It was believed he had been assaulted by an unidentified group of male attackers. A sudden surge of divorce petitions flooded the local court, and many houses were put up for sale. Terry returned home on that fateful day, discovered my parting gifts, and promptly fainted. A neighbor heard her scream and witnessed her collapse. It didn't take our observant 70-year-old neighbor long to realize why Terry had fainted. She promptly called emergency services before leaving her house, leaving the door open. Terry made attempts to contact me but was unsuccessful on any of our phones. She even attempted to visit the school, resulting in her arrest. After spending a night in the holding cell and receiving a stern warning from a magistrate, her efforts to reach me slowed considerably. Our children didn't hold back in expressing their disapproval of her blatant infidelity. Fortunately, they were both married and had inherited more ethical views on fidelity from me, clearly not from Terry. The divorce proceedings were completed, and the remaining financial matters were resolved as per the usual process. Terry had to sell the house, and the proceeds allowed her to purchase a smaller home in the outer suburbs where she currently resides alone. The stigma of being known as one of the infamous gym slots never left her. Whenever she ventured uptown, she faced numerous sidelong glances and whispered snickers. The resulting depression stemming from this rejection and shame eventually led to receiving care in a mental hospital. As for me, I continued with my teaching profession, living contentedly in my new home. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Narcissistic mom kicked me out at 19 for her new baby, but years later she begged me for money. So I made her believe I'd pay her debts, then exposed her cruelty online. I, 25F, got kicked out of my house 6 years ago when my mother, 45F, and my stepdad, 49M, had my half-sister. My mother had me when she was really young, and her grandparents and parents were really orthodox and strict, so they forced her to have me. She hadn't even wanted to tell them that she was pregnant, but unfortunately, my dad didn't know it and told them before she could say anything. From what I've heard, she took the pregnancy test, and as soon as she saw that the results were positive, he called both their parents up and told them everything because he thought that this was news that she would want to share with him. He didn't even wait to ask her, which was pretty stupid of him. But then again, that's just how my dad is. Needless to say, they broke up shortly after that, and since they were never married, it was a much easier process. My parents had met each other in college and had been together for a year when they got pregnant, but after this little thing that my dad did, my mom dumped him. But she couldn't get rid of me because her family already knew, and they said that if she turned at the pregnancy then they would disown her, and so she had to go through with it. I know the story because she has told it to me several times and keeps reminding me how lucky I am to even be alive today, because had it been in her hands, she never would have had me. It is always such a nice thing to hear from your mother. She claims that I am the result of my dad's stupidity, which makes her even more annoyed with me than she usually would. And that's why I've been raised to make myself as invisible as possible. My grandparents and great-grandparents made sure that I was born, but they didn't account for what would happen to me after that. My childhood was rough, to say the least. You guys already know how my mother was, but my dad was no better either. My mom hates me because she didn't want me and wouldn't have had me had it not been for family pressure. She also believes that I was the reason she couldn't go further in her career because she also had to take care of me alongside college and work, which is fair, I guess, but resenting me just because I was born and treating me badly as a child seems a little excessive. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't deprived of anything as a child because my grandparents were the ones paying for everything since my dad couldn't afford to pay child support, so I had everything that I wanted, but I still got the feeling that I was nothing more than a burden to my mother, and she never did anything to make me feel otherwise. She never spoke to me kindly or showed me any affection, and even when I would achieve something, she never celebrated it with me. It was like living with a very cranky older roommate who hated you for no reason and just wanted you to go away as soon as you could. And then, on the other hand, there was my father. He was much sweeter and nicer to be around as compared to my mother, but he was just as incompetent as a father, and I'm pretty sure that when I was a kid, he definitely had some drug problems. I couldn't recognize it back then, but now I'm sure that he was a pothead. He would always be doing weird things and saying weird crap to me, but I dismissed it as him trying to be funny for the most part and didn't think much of it. He would attend all the holidays and my birthdays and would have dinner with us once a month, but my mother seemed to hate him as well, and I could always hear them fighting about his behavior. My mother didn't want me, but she was stuck with me because her family had decided that my dad wasn't capable enough to take care of me, and honestly, they were not wrong. They had to decide who would raise me for the most part before I was born, and my mother's family made sure that she took the responsibility, and my dad only got to see me on the weekends, but even that would be implemented only after I was a certain age. Before I was 10 years old, I lived with my mother full-time and only see my dad a couple of times a month, but after that, I was allowed to live with him on the weekends, and it was a downgrade because after I turned 10 years old, I realized that my dad was definitely not ready to be my father. He lived in a tiny apartment, and it was very apparent that he could not afford to live the kind of lifestyle that my mother was used to because he lived in poverty, and the living room had a distinct weed smell. I also knew that he was unable to hold down a job for long since my mother would be complaining about it all the time. She kept telling me that if my dad wasn't a complete idiot, she would have been able to PW me off to him for at least half the week instead of just the weekend without her family hounding her about it. At my father's place, I felt well, but I didn't feel comfortable because I knew that having me over was putting a strain on him since I obviously couldn't live off of one meal a day as he did. But nevertheless, he still made an effort to cheer me up whenever I was at his place. So that's how my life was as a kid. I would have to put up with my mother and her constant reminders that I was not wanted at our house whenever I was living with her, and on the weekend I would have to deal with my dad in the kind of state that he was in. And then when I was around 15, my mother started dating my stepdad, Jeffrey. He was not a bad guy, but he was not a good guy. He was simply just indifferent to me, and if I'm being honest, that was just much better than my mother and my dad. He didn't talk to me, I didn't talk to him, and it was all peaceful. Anyway, they were together for a few years, and then when I was 17, they got married. 2 years later, they announced that they were pregnant, and I wasn't really concerned about it because it had nothing to do with me. I was still going on with my life and sticking to my routine as usual, but I had no idea what was about to come. When I was 18, I decided to take a gap year instead of going to college and get some work experience for later. I regret that decision. I should have just gone to college when I had the chance to because my grandparents were ready to pay for it, but a few months after my 18th birthday, my mother and her parents got into a very bad fight because of some stupid little thing that I don't even remember, and they stopped speaking to each other. This also meant that they stopped sending money for me and I was on my own, but then thankfully I was working as an intern at the time, so I was getting some money. On my 19th birthday, I started applying to colleges, and my mother was 7 months along at the time. Even then, she didn't tell me anything about what was going to happen when my half-sister was born. However, just a week after my half-sister was born and my mother had come home from the hospital, she and Jeffrey sat me down and told me that they had something important to tell me. I was kind of taken aback because I couldn't imagine anything that my mother had to say to me that could lead to anything good, because when they started talking to me, they told me that they needed the rooms in the house now that my half-sister was born. They were going to hire a full-time nanny, and they needed to give her a room to stay. There was the master bedroom, which my mother and Jeffrey used to stay in, there was my room, and there was a guest room as well, but my mother told me that they were going to repaint the guest room and make it into a nursery, and of course they couldn't let anybody into their own bedroom, so it was about time that I left the house because I was already 19, and as an adult, I had no reason to be living with my parents still because it was getting weird, and they needed their privacy. I thought that it was quite shocking because even though I was an adult legally, I still needed a home because I was going to have to come back from college eventually, and then I would need a place to go. I told my mother about it, and she said that whenever I needed to come back, I could just go live with my dad. But that was not possible because at the time my dad had turned into a serious addict. Not only did he have a drug problem, which was bad even if it was just weird, he had also developed a gambling addiction, and his home was just not the kind of place anybody would want to go to. And I obviously couldn't go live with my grandparents because they were not on speaking terms with my mother, and if they didn't want to speak to my mother, there was no chance that they would want to speak to me because to them I was just an extension of my mom. This is also the reason why I had never had to worry about money before, because since my grandparents wanted to take care of my mother, they also wanted to take care of me, but once their relationship was over, so was ours, and I knew this because I had tried to get back in touch with them several times, but with no luck. It was bad enough that I was getting kicked out, but I also had to start thinking about how I was going to pay my way through college because while I was applying, had just assumed that my mother would do it for me. I knew she hated me, but I thought that going to college would mean that I would be away from her and the family and wouldn't want it to be that. But when she told me that she was kicking me out of the house, I asked her if she would be willing to pay for me to go to college, and she just laughed in my face and said that not only was she kicking me out, but she was also cutting off any ties that she had with me because she had done her time, and now that she was not even in touch with her parents anymore, she had no reason to keep me with her. I was shocked that anyone could be capable of being so cruel, and I ended up crying, but she just made a face and told me that if I was going to cry, she would rather have me do it outside of the house because I was ruining the vibe of what was supposed to be otherwise happy day. Before that day, I had never said anything to my mother because I just didn't want to argue with her or waste my own time, but that day I decided to stand up for myself because I was not going to get kicked out of the house silently. I would go kicking and screaming, but I would let her know exactly what I thought of her. I told her that she was a terrible mother and had always been one, and I was actually glad that I was getting rid of her finally and that I would share that my life would be much better off without her. To that, she just turned around and told me that she didn't care about any of it, and she just wanted me to leave because now that she and her husband had a real daughter, she didn't need me anymore, and I was just as unwanted as I was before, if not more so. I broke down once again, and I think it was pretty much the worst day of my life, but I still collected myself a little while later, packed my things, and left the house, never to look back again. Once I had left, I headed straight to my dad's place, and I knew that no matter what state he was in, I was going to correct it and make the best of my situation because I was not going to let both my parents and their lackadaisical attitude ruin my life. Once I got there, I realized that my dad was in pretty bad shape, and his house was even worse. I couldn't even tell the last time it had been cleaned thoroughly. From the looks of it, there was trash all over the floor, and he probably hadn't even showered in a really long time. By then, I knew that he hadn't had a job for almost a year at that point. He was losing money left and right because he had a gambling addiction. He was lucky that his dad had passed away a couple of months ago and had left him a bunch of money, which he was now squandering. As soon as I reached, my dad tried to tell me that he was happy to see me, but he was too high to actually say anything. He just smiled at me and thought that it would be enough. But I was not in the mood. I had already been having a very bad day, and I just couldn't deal with it anymore. He had a joint that he was smoking, so I walked up to him, and I smacked it out of his hands because I was going to make sure that he stood up as a parent and did everything for me that he hadn't been doing for as long as I was alive. I was not going to let his bad habits ruin my life, so I told him that I was here to stay for good because my mother had kicked me out, and now he had to make up for everything that he hadn't done for me and really clean up his act. He thought that I was kidding and tried to pick his joint up off the floor, but that's when I lost my temper and ended up slapping my dad right across the face. I regret it. I shouldn't have done that, but I was losing my mind about my future, and I just lost sight of what was important in that moment, so I ended up doing that, but it didn't lead to anything bad, so I guess it was meant to happen. When I slapped him, I immediately started apologizing, but he was really mad. So he went back into his room and shut the door. There was only one room to begin with, so I decided to stay in the living room. But the next morning, my dad was the one who came to me and asked me what exactly had happened the previous night. He had sobered up by then, so I told him everything in great detail, and I told him that now I needed his help, and I wanted him to clean up his act because I wanted a better future for myself, and for that, I would need his help and cooperation so he couldn't just gamble and stay high all day like he was used to. He was a little shocked that my mother had kicked me out and called her up to ask about it, but she didn't respond, so that was the day that it was decided that I would live with him, and since he had no money, he could not afford to send me to college, but he promised me that he would try his best to be a better father to me because that slap had really brought him back to his senses in a major way. It wasn't easy, and it was an uphill climb from that point onwards, and my dad relapsed into his old habits several times in the course of the next couple of years, but I still stuck by him, and he promised me that he would try and keep getting better. I couldn't go to college, but I couldn't waste my time at home either, so I decided to apply to a few companies for internships, and I got picked in a few of them. They paid well, but not enough to sustain a nice lifestyle or to pay for college because if I did apply to college, I would have to go and quit my internship, and then I would have no money. I wasn't ready to take out a student loan because at the time I wasn't sure if my dad would be able to do better in life, and I didn't want to dig a hole for myself that I couldn't get out of, so I stuck to working, and whenever I was not working, I was doing the household chores because the house had to be clean, and I couldn't allow my dad to live the way he had been living for so long. I was not the only one who was looking for jobs, and my dad was also doing the same, but since he hadn't been working for a really long time and he had a bit of a reputation because of his previous employers who didn't like him because he was always high on the job, he found it much more difficult than me, and it was a lot more frustrating for him as well because his daughter was bringing home money, but he wasn't, and that was bound to get on his nerves. However, neither of us had anywhere to go, so in spite of everything, we had to stick with each other and deal with everything together. And then finally, around 3 years ago, something great finally happened to us. My dad was working as a store manager, but it barely paid, and the hours were long. I was working as an accountant, and it paid slightly better, but it was a very tedious desk job. However, one of my friends who lived in a different state told me that her father was expanding his business and opening up a new location in my city. This friend of mine, Aggie, had known me since we were in middle school together. Her parents got divorced, and she moved to a different state with her father, but she comes back for the holidays every year to meet her, and that's when we usually get together. She knew everything about me, and she knew what kind of trouble I had been through in the past few years. She had even offered to help me out with college tuition, but I couldn't take money from her because then I would know that I owed her money, and I couldn't live with that. I had refused to take money from her and her father even though they were happy to help me and were quite rich since her dad had a large-scale office supplies business. They made the decision to branch out recently, and she contacted me to let me know that she had a job offer for me because she knew that I was looking for something. I was a little scared that she was doing this as a favor to me, and I asked her about it, and she said that her dad wouldn't have usually considered somebody of my age for a position like this. She had talked him into it because she knew that I could do it, and I just had the drive and ambition. She trusted me and knew that I was capable enough to handle it. It was technically a favor, but she reassured me that she also had faith in me, which is why she was doing me this favor. So she asked me to become the corporate liaison for them, and I was happy to accept that position. It came with much better pay, and I would have to work longer hours, but I was glad to do it. I also asked her if she would have an opening for my dad, and given his qualifications and past work experience, they decided to make him the warehouse manager because he had experience in that field and it worked in that position before, so we were sorted, and that was the first time that something good happened to us. Since then, things have only gone well, and my dad and I are doing much better now. He is off weed completely and doesn't gamble anymore either. We have moved into a much better house in a nicer neighborhood and have been living here for the past 2 years. Things are going super well, and I couldn't ask for more really. 6 years ago, I wouldn't even have imagined myself in this place. But yet here I am. As for my mother, I didn't have any contact with her after I left the house and have no idea what she has been up to all these years. But 2 weeks ago, she contacted me and told me that she needed my help. She sounded pretty desperate, and I could tell that something serious had happened, so I decided to hear her out. So apparently my mother had quit her job shortly after I had left, and she and Jeffrey had started a business of their own, but unfortunately it had been flopping for a really long time and I don't know why, but they kept investing in it and putting money into a place where they knew they were not getting any returns. So surprisingly, they ended up going broke and now they had a bunch of debt, and they were selling everything to repay everybody that they had taken money from, but then they were falling short. My mother had heard from a relative that my dad and I had moved into a better house, so she had assumed that we were doing well now. So she thought that it would be a good idea to call me up and ask for help. She didn't even apologize, she just said that we should put everything in the past and keep our differences aside because this was not just about her. She also had a little daughter whose future was at stake, and if I had any kindness in my heart at all, then I would help them out and pay off some of their debts. I thought it was very gutsy of her to ask me for help after what she had put me through and just to mess with her. I decided to agree with her on the phone call and play along. But truth be told, I had no intention of actually giving her any money or paying off any of her debts. I still told her that I was going to look into it and help her out just because I was feeling petty. So for a few days, I let her on and talked to her every day while she told me about her finances and stuff. I heard her out knowing that I was not going to contribute in any way whatsoever, and this was just a farce, but she didn't know it, and I kept waiting for her to apologize or something, but that apology never came either, and that made me feel a lot less guilty about what I was about to do. And then 2 days ago, she finally asked me when I was going to send the money to her, so I told her the truth that I was not going to send any money to her and that she had been played. I reminded her of what she had put me through all those years ago, and not just that, but the way she had behaved with me throughout my childhood. She was a fool to expect that I was going to help her out after everything that happened, and she hadn't even apologized to me, so she had no reason to expect anything from me. She was an AUL human being and a terrible mother, and I was going to make sure that everybody knew about it, so I hung up before she could say anything and made a post about all of it. I narrated my entire story and even included the part where my mother had come to me 2 weeks ago begging me for help and acting as if she was entitled to money and contribution. It was just ridiculous and stupid of her, and I wanted everybody to know about it, which is why I did it. I personally don't see anything wrong with it, but my dad thinks that I took it way too far and that I shouldn't have done it. I don't know what my mother's reaction to it was because after that phone call I pretty much blocked her everywhere, but I know that my relatives can still see the post, and everybody who knew my mother now knows what she's been up to and how she treated me in my childhood. I think it was necessary for me to expose my mother because she had always pretended that she was a really sweet person and a successful career-driven woman. But well, that was a lie now, and I think I did the right thing, but my dad thinks that I shouldn't have said anything to her and just ignored her the first time that she approached me for help instead of playing along and stuff because that's just cruel. And I'll admit it, it was cruel, but that was the intention behind it. She had been cruel to me all my life. I think this was fair game, and I'm not in a movie. I don't need to do everything right and set an example for other people. I can just do what I want. But anyway, my dad thinks that I took it too far, and now he's insisting that I apologize. So Aita for promising my estranged toxic mother that I would help her pay off her debts, but then backing out at the last minute and then exposing her online? Update 1. Hey, so I took the advice that most of you had for me and decided to reset my dad down and talk to him about it, and it actually worked, which was nice. He hadn't really been an active father for most of my childhood or any of it, to be honest. He was always just high and didn't seem to care about anything, so obviously he didn't remember most things, but then I reminded him how awfully my mother used to treat me and how I basically had nobody because even though he liked having me around, he was not exactly there for me, and that managed to make him realize that what I did it was coming from a place of anger and resentment, and I had been battling it up for ages now. So what I did was not the right thing to do, and it was definitely not the moral or ethical thing to do, but if it gave me frustration and anger of all those years an outlet, it was probably good for me, so he understood and stopped saying that I needed to apologize to my mother. She never apologized to me for anything that she put me through, and on top of that, she had the audacity to expect me to help her out. It was entitlement on another level altogether. She hasn't contacted me after that, and it's been almost a week. I know everybody's talking about it because I have received a lot of messages asking about my mom, but I'm not really interested in talking to other people about it. I posted whatever I had to say, I have nothing more to add, and now I have a lot of work to do as well, so I don't have time for this drama. What's done is done, and it's over now. Update 2. So my mom finally reached out to me today after almost 2 weeks of being no contact. She didn't have much to say. She just told me that she never should have trusted me, and that she regretted ever having a child like me. But it's fine. The feeling is mutual. I also regret having a mother like her, and I would rather have been an orphan than have spent my childhood with her. She told me that thanks to my little post, she couldn't live in this town anymore, and I decided to move away because shame and embarrassment were just way too much. So I finally got what I wanted according to her, but honestly, I don't really care where she is. She and I haven't been in touch for a really long time, and it makes no difference to me where she lives, so that's something that she's very wrong about. But it's okay, she's a narcissist and she has a tendency to make everything about herself, so this is no big surprise anyway. I'm just glad that she's moving away and that I don't have to talk to her again because she's blocked me. Update 3. Hey, so it's been a month since my mother moved away and things have been quiet. We don't have any contact anymore. But I heard from a few of my relatives that she has apparently got her entire family off and is not speaking to anybody good for her, I guess. My dad and I are still doing great, and in fact, my dad just got a raise, so it's all good, and I can't complain. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Jealous wife demanded an open marriage, cheated with her ex, stalked me when I found someone, lied to our daughter, and now wants to close our marriage. I'm 39M and my wife 37F. My wife and I have been married for 15 years. We have 2 children, a 14-year-old girl and a 12-year-old boy. About a year and a half ago, my wife came to me asking for an open marriage. She said she was bored with just us and wanted to experience more. I was very against this as I am a strong believer that marriage is between 2 people. At the same time, when we got married, I had 5 sexual partners and my wife had only been with me. She made it clear that either we opened things up or she was prepared to file for divorce. Neither of us wanted that, so I agreed under certain conditions. Nobody brought back to the house, we don't talk about partners, the kids don't know, family doesn't know, all partners are tested ahead of time, nobody that we both know, etc. I had a strong suspicion that my wife had someone in mind, and this was confirmed when, 24 hours after we agreed, she went out and didn't return until 4 a.m. It was difficult for me to accept, and I was really not okay with it, but I wanted to save my marriage. Last May, I met Amber. Our daughters are in marching band together. Amber is divorced and has no interest in getting married again. Like everyone else in the world, she does have needs. So, 5 months after opening up the marriage, I began sleeping with Amber. At first, it felt like cheating, but honestly, it's nice to have something no strings, where neither of us wants it to proceed forward. Over time, I became comfortable with the idea that my wife and I would be able to get our needs met both inside and outside of our marriage. It actually made our sex life a lot more passionate, and we were much happier. My wife and her side guy, who I never met, stopped seeing each other in April amid coronavirus. From what I gather, while he's in an open marriage, his wife is not aware, and it was too hard to get away. In May, we helped organize a Zoom concert for the band kids, which turned out great. Through my wife met Amber for the first time. Well, I guess Amber has been open with a few of the moms because it got back to my wife that Amber was my outside partner. My wife informed me that, as we both know Amber, I needed to end things with her. I refused, citing the fact that neither of us knew her ahead of time and the meeting did not violate the rules we established. Throughout the past month, She's numerous times told me that she's uncomfortable with me continuing to sleep with Amber, and I need to conclude the arrangement. Note that she was fine for a year where she was with her partner. This weekend, she came to me and stated that she'd like to close our marriage again. I told her I was open to that as long as we agreed that it would remain closed moving forward. She agreed that's what she wants as well, that she doesn't need to have any more partners, that she's happy with just me. I told her that we could agree to close the marriage on 2 conditions. The first I laid out above. The second, I wanted her to sign a document waiving spousal support in the event of divorce. She flipped out. She categorically refused to even consider that. My wife is and has not worked since we got married. She said that I could keep seeing Amber and leave her with nothing if she signed that. I told her that I'd be willing to include a list of mutually agreed upon situations, including infidelity on my part, where the agreement would be void. She says it's not open for discussion, that she's not going to continue to be cheated on and left with nothing when I decide to leave her for Amber. I pointed out that this whole thing was her idea and that I only went along with it to preserve our marriage. She says that if we don't close the marriage up then it might as well be over. I told her that I'm not going to tolerate being threatened with divorce every time she doesn't get her way. She says I'm being dramatic and I need to focus on us. Should I agree without stipulations? I know there's no future with Amber as we've both agreed it's purely physical. And even though I know I'm standing my ground, I feel like I'm blowing up my marriage over a dead end. At the same time, I don't believe it's about Amber at all. Update 1. So based on what some of you have said here this morning, I called Amber up, reminded her that we were supposed to keep things discreet, and asked who she shared the details of our liaison with. She denied telling anyone, and I didn't get the feeling she was lying. I pulled up my wife's Google timeline history and discovered that she tracked me to Amber's house in April. She followed me and then deliberately introduced herself to Amber to create a conflict here. I was thinking she actually wanted to get involved in band parents, but no, she just wanted to try to end things with my outside partner. I don't even know what to do at this point. Now for some comments where Opie replied. Comment 1. I suspect your wife flipped because she has no intention of staying with you long term. Opie. That's exactly what I thought. Believe me, my intention is not to screw her financially. She's coming from the angle that she's so sure about us now and ready to close things up. Well, what about a year from now or 2 years from now, when she decides she wants someone else and decides she wants to open things up again? I'm not going to be blackmailed with divorce every time she wants it both ways. Comment 2. Your marriage is already over. Good luck. Opie. I'm coming to that realization. I hate it, but she is not the same person I married. Comment 3. While he's in an open marriage, his wife is unaware, so he's just cheating on his wife then. Opie. Yep, apparently my wife thought it was open. He told her it was, and he was just screwing around on his wife without her knowledge. Opie on if his wife still wanted to close the marriage or not and if the divorce will still take place. Opie. I first asked if she was willing to agree that once it was closed it would remain closed. Then I asked her if she'd be willing to waive spousal support in the event of divorce. Then specifically I asked if she'd be willing to waive it only in specific instances such as her cheating or me refusing to reopen the marriage. She refused to discuss it. I don't want to be in a situation where 6 months from now her outside partner wants to start back up. Or she sees someone else she's interested in and decides to threaten me with divorce again if I don't open the marriage back up. I have no intention of screwing her financially. I wanted to see how she'd react to me asking for a guarantee she wouldn't ask that of me again. She made it clear that she wasn't willing to put her money where her mouth is. Opie on how he met Amber. Opie. I met Amber through band parents. Our daughters are not close, just in the band together. My wife was not involved in band at all as it's not her thing. With quarantine going on, she was looking for things to do and decided she wanted to help with the concert. At that point, should I have said no, you can't because my outside partner is a band mom and I don't want you involved in that circle? She was in my circle, not my wife's. My wife had nothing to do with the band until May, a full year after I was seeing Amber. As it turns out, there was a very specific reason my wife decided all of the sudden to get involved with the band. I got involved with Amber in May of 2019. She was with her guy since December 2018. Update 2. To recap, my wife told me that she wanted an open marriage. I didn't, but agreed when she told me she was prepared to file for divorce. She had an outside partner within 24 hours. Took me a few months. Her partner and her broke up. She stalked me and introduced herself to my partner to try to force me to end it. When that didn't work, she decided to demand that the marriage be closed again. I put conditions on it that she wasn't willing to accept. Now on to the last month. It's been a very tough month. I confronted my wife about the stalking. She denied it at first, and then I brought up her location history. She attempted to deflect, claiming I invaded her privacy, but I didn't take the bait. Finally, she admitted that she didn't like that I had someone on the side when she didn't, and a mom at the school felt too close to home. I agreed that I would end things with Amber if she would agree to counseling, close the marriage up permanently, and start looking for a job to help with household expenses. She replied that she's a stay-at-home mom. I told her it was something we could revisit after coronavirus is over, but when things normalize, she can't just stay home. We did a few therapy sessions, and things went well at first. The therapist challenged her on why she had followed me, asked why she felt she had to go outside the marriage, and had her address pretty much everything going through my mind. Then things went south. She admitted her outside partner was someone from her past, a high school boyfriend. They'd broken up before anything happened and had reconnected. She regretted not going all the way with him in high school and decided that she wanted to fulfill that desire. I was pissed. I told her that if me choosing a mom from school was too close to home, then her choosing a married ex-boyfriend was completely unacceptable. I told her I didn't even want to look at her. I checked into a hotel to go cool off because I didn't want my kids to see me like that. I stayed there for a few days and then decided to go home and deal with what was left of my marriage. When I got home, I found that my daughter was being unusually cold to me, even for a 14-year-old girl. She was very dismissive. When I asked her what was going on, she went off on me for cheating on mom with a band mom. I asked her where she heard this. She wouldn't tell me at first, telling me it didn't matter, but then finally admitted her mother told her that I was staying at my girlfriend's house. After I left, I counted to 10 in my head, told her it wasn't true, showed her the receipt on my phone for the hotel, and told her that her mother and I had a fight and I decided to take some time away so we could both calm down. She cried a lot, and I promised her that I loved her and I'd always love her. I did my best to remain calm, though I was burning up inside. I didn't even go to my wife. I went on Facebook and found the guy's wife. I sent her a message letting her know that for a year and a half her husband had been having an affair with my wife and I'd be happy to send her any proof she'd like. She was very appreciative and had suspected something was up. A few hours later, my wife came to me in a rage, screaming that I had violated the confidentiality of our therapy and ruined the guy's life. I asked her what she meant to do by telling our daughter that I had a girlfriend. She denied doing it and still refuses to admit that she told her anything other than I was away for a few days. This went down last Thursday. We haven't spoken to each other since. We're supposed to have another counseling session tomorrow, though I don't know if it's even worth going. I keep catching her in lies, and I don't think I'll ever be able to trust her again. I know that filing for divorce is the wise choice at this point, but I feel sick thinking about it. I feel like a failure because I couldn't make my marriage work. I know that's where it's going to end up. I just feel like I'm going to throw up every time I try to call an attorney. Now for some comments. Comment 1. Appreciate the update. Sorry to hear therapy is only bringing more things to light and your wife, drowning in her sea of lies, has clearly shattered your trust in her completely. I hope for the sake of the kids that your wife wasn't the one to tell that to your daughter, but when people are sinking fast they'll latch on to anybody to keep them afloat, and turning the kids against you isn't exactly an original strategy. You're not a failure because the marriage has ran its course. At this point, it's probably best to contact that attorney no matter how difficult it may be. Do it for you. Do it for your kids. Even do it for your wife so she can hit rock bottom on her own without destroying your lives in the process. Best of luck, man. You are not a failure, you're a resource. Talk to an attorney. If you're honest with yourself, your wife opened the relationship after she had or was planning on cheating anyway. Then when things failed, she didn't want you to have fun while she wasn't. She doesn't contribute to the household and has no plans to. She constantly lies. What makes you think anything is going to fix this? When someone shows you who they are, believe them. It's her way or the highway. So like I said, talk to an attorney, get your finances in order, and get out of this awful relationship. Comment 2, you didn't fail. Your wife wanted to cheat but didn't want to call it cheating. She never wanted/expected you to do the same. The fact she said she'd divorce you if you didn't is extra manipulative. The fact she tried to harm your relationship with your daughter is the last straw. I personally wouldn't find the situation fixable, but never beat yourself up for any of this. This is all your wife going off the rails, and you tried hanging on for dear life, but maybe it's time to let go. Also, I'd be fully open with your daughter about the whole situation. It will all come out eventually, so the true story instead of rumors and lies is much healthier. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Finally met my biological dad after 30 years, bonded on his boat, then caught him cheating with my girlfriend at a family dinner, and he got her pregnant while still married. My girlfriend and I had been together for almost 4 years before everything ended. We met casually through some mutual friends when they both invited us to a haunted house attraction for Halloween. Everybody else was there with their partner, so that left us alone a lot of the time. There was a beer garden at the attraction, and she and I ended up separating from the rest of the group to go there. We talked about everything while we hung out. At the end of the night, we exchanged numbers and started dating officially. She moved in with me a year and a half after we started dating. Growing up, I never knew my dad. There had been many times in my life when I wanted to figure out who he was. The story I was told growing up was that he and my mother had been dating when she got pregnant with me. She is a devout Catholic, so the only option was to go forward with a pregnancy. He didn't want that. He tried to encourage my mom to have an abortion, so she told him that she didn't want anything to do with him. She gave birth to me and raised me as a single mother for the first 12 years of my life. Then she met my stepdad, and they had more children after me. No matter how much I asked her to tell me who my father was, she would always refuse. I had eventually resigned to never knowing the truth. It was my girlfriend who convinced me to try and find out again. There was a death in my family. One of my cousins had cancer and they passed away. That really got me thinking about other illnesses that my family might have. My girlfriend and I went to my mother and approached her about telling me who my father was from that angle. I needed to know if I had a history of any major illnesses in my blood. I also told her that it would be good to know when I wanted to have kids. That was the icing on the cake for her, and she decided to tell me everything. She gave me his name and I finally reached out to him. He was receptive to meeting me, which I was afraid that he wouldn't be. My girlfriend came with me to the lunch that we had scheduled. It was strange seeing him for the first time because I could see just how much I looked like him. After everything, it was extremely emotional for me, and I didn't know how to process everything. My girlfriend was there for me, and she comforted me through everything. About a week after our first lunch, my biological father reached out to me again and asked me if I wanted to see him again. Apparently, he felt very bad after our first meeting and had decided he wanted a chance to get to know me. My girlfriend encouraged me to try. I invited her to come along with me because it was difficult for me to do it alone. All 3 of us went fishing out on his boat, and we had a good time. We drank a few beers and we all talked. He told me all about his family. He was married, and he had 3 kids much younger than me. He explained that he just wasn't ready to be a father when my mom was pregnant. Before we parted ways for the day, he and my girlfriend exchanged numbers so we could all find time to meet his family. I wanted to meet my half-siblings, and my girlfriend was the organized one between us. A few weeks went by, and I hadn't seen him, but we had been texting every so often to keep in touch. My girlfriend told me that they were planning a dinner at the end of the month at my father's house. I work in construction, and I was doing a job where I was about 50 feet in the air when I dropped my phone on concrete. When I looked at it again, it was completely trashed. The screen was virtually untouchable because of the glass. I got a new one as soon as I could and transferred everything over from my old phone. I moved the SIM card over for a quick transition. There were a few contacts that weren't saved to the SIM card that I needed to add to the phone again. One of those was my biological father. I got home later that day, and my girlfriend was taking a nap on the couch. I needed my father's number so I could let him know that I had a new phone in case you needed to reach out to me. I knew my girlfriend's phone password, and I had used her phone countless times before, so I didn't think anything of it when I grabbed it to send myself the contact information. When I clicked on his name and the contacts, I saw a long call history between both of them. It immediately caught my attention because she had never told me they had been having conversations with each other on the phone. I walked into the other room and looked through the message and call log to see exactly what was happening. Their messages began the day that we all went on the boat together, a few hours after they exchanged numbers. My father texted my girlfriend and told her that I was lucky to have her. It started off friendly, and she thanked him, saying that she was lucky to have me too. Then my father started getting very flirty with her. He told her how beautiful she was and how if I didn't treat her right, he might have to step in. It was weird to see because I knew that he was married with children. My girlfriend replied and told him that she would be happy to let him step in if needed. From there, other messages were very suggestive. They were always tiptoeing around, overtly saying that they wanted to sleep with each other. It was pretty obvious what was happening, but it didn't seem like it was anything other than flirting until my father sent my girlfriend a picture of himself. It was a nude photo where he told her that a new picture she uploaded to Instagram had really turned him on. My girlfriend told him that she was glad it did, then send him some other pictures of herself. There were videos and audio recordings and dozens of pictures between them. I clicked on one of the videos that my father sent her. It was him telling her about all the filthy things he wanted to do to her when they finally got together. I could hear kids running around in the background outside of the room he was in. It was clear through the messages that they hadn't actually met to have sex in person yet. They were planning on sneaking away to his boat while everybody was at his house. Before my girlfriend woke up, I put her phone back and pretended like I didn't see anything. I was extremely hurt by everything. My father had known that I existed my entire life and pretended like I didn't. Now that I finally had the opportunity to reach out to him, he betrayed me once again by hitting on my girlfriend. And my girlfriend knew how important it was for me to meet him and decided to sleep with him. I felt massively betrayed by both of them. I knew right away that I wanted to make them suffer for their choices. The dinner was only a week away, so I sucked it up and pretended like everything was fine until then. The day of the dinner, I restrained myself and made it through the meal without lunging across the table to attack my father. I spent a lot of time getting to know my stepmother, and I felt bad for her about everything. Honestly, if he messaged my girlfriend after knowing her for such a short amount of time, I wouldn't have been surprised to find out that he had other affairs in the past. After dinner, we decided to put on a movie and watch it together. My dad said that he wasn't particularly interested in watching the movie, and he had some things that he needed to wrap up on the boat. He excused himself from the movie, and nobody questioned it. About 15 minutes into the movie, my girlfriend said she got a phone call. I didn't see her phone ring or light up. It was her cover to go outside and meet my father. She was gone for about 3 minutes, and I turned to my stepmother and mentioned that it was weird that she had been gone for so long. All of the kids had already fallen asleep on the couch, so I was thankful that I wouldn't disturb them by causing a scene. I told her that I was going to go check on my girlfriend, and she paused the movie to give me a moment. I already knew that I wouldn't see her on the porch, but I looked anyway and went back in, and I told her that she was gone on. She was concerned, so she walked outside with me to look for her. She was the one who suggested we go ask my father if he'd seen her, so I followed her to the boat where we both knew he was working on something. As soon as we opened the door to the lower level, we could hear very obvious sex noises. She yelled my father's name and the sound stopped. It took a minute, but he came to the door of the bedroom and asked her what she needed, like she was disturbing him. She asked him what he was doing, and he told her he was rearranging furniture. I almost wanted to laugh. I asked him if my girlfriend was down there with him, and he tried to say it was ridiculous. I pushed past him and opened the door to find her trying to put her clothes on as quietly as possible. A four-way argument broke out between everybody as everything unfolded. Honestly, even though I had a suspicion that we were going to find out what we did, my reaction was pretty natural. I was hurt and I was angry, and I let that show. Nobody had any idea that I had almost planned for us to see what we did. My stepmom kicked my dad out of the house that night, and I went back to her apartment to pack a bag and get away. I couldn't be around my girlfriend after what happened. I ended up moving out of the apartment entirely. A few weeks later, I found out that my dad had been looking for a place to crash, so my girlfriend invited him there. They were seeing each other for a couple of months, and my girlfriend got pregnant. It seems like my dad had a bit of a pattern in how he went about things. He told her that he already had children and he was trying to reconcile things with his wife. He couldn't do that if he had another baby in the picture. He tried to deny it, and he even tried to convince her to get an abortion. She didn't want to do that. As soon as I found out what happened, I informed my stepmother about it, so she would be aware that he was going to try to lie to her. She thanked me for the information and assured me that she would be staying far away from my father. All of the friends that my girlfriend and I had together were appalled by what she did. They didn't understand how she could sleep with somebody who had such a fragile relationship with her boyfriend, and they thought she was heartless. A lot of them stopped talking to her after everything. She did end up having a child with my father, but he wasn't in the picture. My father divorced his wife and was forced to pay child support and alimony from his paychecks to her. On top of that, because a DNA test proved that he was the father of my ex-girlfriend's child, he was forced to pay child support. I highly doubt he was saying any of his own paychecks. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Could never get my father-in-law's blessing, so my 5-year relationship ended in divorce. Now my ex-wife wants us to try again. Background. We have been in a relationship for 5 years and living together for 4. And this is the best, most satisfying relationship I've had in all my life. She works in the healthcare industry, and her kindness towards those in need and less privileged than her is what drew me to ask her out in the first place. In the last 4 years between us, there have been some little fights and only one big fight. The fight happened in October 2014. She planned for a lunch with Carl, which I had to miss because of a work-related emergency. He called me later that night saying that I don't show him the respect he deserves, and I'm always trying to get out of family events because I don't want to be around him, which is not true because half of the planning and organizing on his birthday was on me, and it was a big event. In the morning, I told GF about his call, and she brushed it off as him being intoxicated. The next weekend when we went to her parents' place for family dinner, Carl was extremely hostile towards me, but I kept silent about it until he said that I should not have missed the lunch every other Sunday, his family dinner at her folks' place, and I rarely miss it, so I didn't think it was a big deal. I apologized to him and said that I would make up for it in some way at the next dinner. I bought a bunch of smart wearable accessories for him because GF suggested he was interested in them. He refused to accept the gift, and when I insisted, he walked out saying he needs some air. I had no clue what was going on, and GF's mom was mortified, apologizing to me over and over again for Carl's behavior. When we got home, I asked GF if there was something going on which she was not telling me. At first, she tried to brush it off, but then she said that it was my fault for not seeing that her father was not interested in being buddies and wanted my respect, not friendship. This was a complete surprise to me because I never really thought of him as anything more than her father. We would just watch the game together sometimes and chat about it later, but that was the extent of our social interaction. GF said I needed to earn his respect, and I told her I had done nothing wrong. That's when the fight started, but a few days later, Carl called me and said he liked the watch and other accessories. That's his way of declaring truths, I guess. After that, I was always extra careful never to miss any event with him. Last June, GF's mother died, and it was an incredibly difficult time for everyone. I tried to be as supportive towards the whole family as I could. I cut down my work hours to spend more time with him. GF and I started cooking the family dinner at his place because she thought it would be better for him to see the house alive with people again, and we made it an every-week event for a while just to spend more time with him. Multiple times we made extra effort to host family events, and once we even flew his elder sister over for his birthday. I had thought he would warm up to me a little, but I guess I was wrong, which brings us to today. GF is away for the week on work-related stuff, so I planned the whole proposal. I was going to decorate our apartment like a planetarium with stars and planets and "WR Will You Marry Me" in the stars. It's from Friends, which she is obsessed with. I wanted to start the preparations with his blessing because that way he would feel good about me asking him first and he'd feel included also. I planned a lunch with him for today to ask for his blessing. I told him how much respect I had for him and that I wish one day I could be as good a father as he was. Then when I asked for his blessing for the marriage, he blew up. He was absolutely livid, saying that her daughter deserves a better man and that he never really liked me much and had always hoped the relationship would end. He said all the ass-kissing I was doing last year had showed that I just wanted to appear like a good man to GF and didn't mean any of that. I was so shocked because this is not how I expected it to go at all. I left him still spewing hate and went to one of my friends' place, told him and his wife everything, but they are just as shocked as I am. I spent the day at their place and got home about 2 hours ago, not sure how to proceed now or even what to do. Should I tell GF that her father said no? Should I proceed as if nothing has happened for now? I'm drinking and playing video games. What should I do? Reddit note. I have kept a lot of details intentionally vague because GF and her siblings are active on Reddit. Update 1. I am trapped in a marriage I think is one-sided and I need advice. August 20th, 2019. I'm not sure what I will get out of this. I feel like writing it all down and having a stranger over it might give me some mental clarity. But I think at this point there's no way to salvage our marriage. Also, English is not my native language, so apologies for any errors which cause misunderstandings. I've been in a relationship with my wife for almost 9 years now, married for 2. Our relationship has been, for the most part, a fulfilling and satisfying one for the both of us. It seems like I'm making a self-congratulating post, but we've become better people by virtue of being together. I'm an old-fashioned person, so it was difficult to meet a woman who liked the things I liked and had the opinions I had. The only unsavory part of our relationship over the years has been my relationship with my father-in-law. My wife and I rarely have disagreements, so most of the major fights we've had were because of her father. I want to be clear here, I don't hate him. I respect the guy. He sacrificed a lot in his personal life in order to provide for his family and to make sure my wife was raised with love and care. I used to look up to him in the earlier years of the relationships. He and my mother-in-law would host the family twice every week, and when I first started dating their daughter, it took me by surprise how close they were as a family. I really liked the family events with these picturesque dinners of mild conflicts and contentment with how close my wife was with all her siblings and her parents too. Early on in the relationship, I think I freaked out my wife by how much I enjoyed being at her parents' house. Her mother was a saint of a woman who gave me so much love from the get-go. She would always make sure I was included in family activities and often reserved a seat for me at the family dinner right next to her, talking to me like I was one of her own. I remember one time I was over at their place and had to get back to the city for work. It was getting pretty late when I got up to leave, and it had been snowing. She came down from her room when I was leaving with an overcoat of her husband, saying I should take the coat with me just in case. But I know it was because she knew my car got cold those days. It was a CR car getting to the end of its life. She didn't want me to feel like she thought less of me just because I made less money than my wife. These little mom things she would do made me love her so much. Anyway, the reason I bring up my mother-in-law is because I think she was the reason her husband was accepting of me at the time. She died 4 years ago, and it somehow changed him. I think his love meter broke or something. He started acting like I'd somehow slighted him all the time, like one time wife and I were bringing over some groceries and restocking everything, and I thought it would be nice to stay for the dinner and cook for him while he was out for his evening walk. Wife and I prepared a nice dinner. A dinner he thanked my wife for it. She mentioned that I did most of the work for it, and he kind of looked at me and just stopped talking. Another time in September of 2016, we were staying at his place for the weekend because we were cooking the family dinner. Early morning, wife and I were sitting on the breakfast counter just starting our day, and we thought he was out because he was usually the first one up. I hit my wife on her leg over a stupid pun or something, and I guess he saw because he came over and started yelling at me about not being raised right and being a woman beater. He said a lot of extremely toxic things about me before my younger sister-in-law came into the kitchen and practically dragged him out. My wife repeatedly said that it was a joke, but he wouldn't accept the explanation, saying she sticks up for me. Similarly, I remember one time, this was when his wife was alive, I bought him a gift and he straight up refused to accept it in front of the whole family. My wife's mother, brother and his family including sister-in-law, both sisters, their husbands and the elder sister's kid were there. It was such a humiliating experience for me. I just wanted the man to not hate me all the time. I think my mother-in-law forced him to accept the gift after a few days and made him apologize to me after my mother-in-law died. He changed, it was like his filter was gone. He would stay in his room a lot, only come out for his errands and walks. He wouldn't watch the games with me saying I talk too much. He wouldn't let me fix anything at the house despite me practically living there and having done a lot of work in the house in the past. A popular theory among my friends was that he hated me because I was too close to his wife, which sounds so absurd. She was a maternal figure in my life, and I can't for the life of me understand why that would piss him off. She was nice to everyone. My wife is nice to everyone too, to the point of it being a fault. My mother-in-law used to say that she had 4 sons. Her son, 2 husbands of my wife's sisters, and me. So it's not like I was inappropriately close with the woman. I've discussed this with my wife a lot too, but she is always insistent that my relationship with her mother has nothing to do with it. My wife is the youngest daughter, so she treats her father with a lot of love and respect. Early on in our relationship, his behavior wasn't his issue, and by the time it became an issue, we were already too serious for me to break it off over this. Everyone else in her family likes me as far as I know. I've been invited over by both of her sisters at multiple times for lunches, SL dinners, SLF favors, etc. Everyone treats me like I'm family. I've talked to the eldest sister about why their father hates me, but she's always maintained that he doesn't hate me. She says he loves his youngest daughter a lot and has always been a difficult person to please, and honestly I can see that it's true. On an average day, he is most tolerant of me out of all his sons-in-law, but they all live in different cities or states, and wife and I live in the same neighborhood, say he gets to see me more. I'm sure a part of his resentment is because of that too. After my mother-in-law died, we were all heartbroken. A few days after her funeral, when everyone was starting to leave, my wife and I were going through some of the stuff that her mother left her. She started getting choked up about the fact that the house felt like it had died with her. We decided that we were going to take on the mantle of cooking for family dinners like her mom used to do. It's a pretty big responsibility considering the family is almost never all together except maybe one holiday a year. Sometimes it would just be my father-in-law, brother-in-law, and his family, and us. It was actually really nice for a while. Everyone kept visiting once in a while, and the routine was nice. I was glad to have more time for family and not being harassed by father-in-law. Felt like he was warming up to me at that time. Wife and I started talking about marriage, and it just felt right. I don't think I was ever more sure about anything than about marrying my wife at that time. There was a brief moment before the engagement where she and I got into a fight, but things worked out nicely. We got engaged in May, and it just set things in motion. My wife is the youngest child in her family, so she got a lot of positive attention from her siblings. They had kept her mother's wedding accessories for her, which honestly was such a nice thing to do. And slowly over the months it became this big and happy event in our family. Winter of 2016, when we got married, my wife sat me down and asked me if it would be okay to move in back with her father to take care of him. I think that was the moment where I made the stupidest decision of my life when I said yes. I was blinded by love, not just for my wife but for her family. For her mother who I missed so much, for her father who liked me but never really accepted me, and for her siblings who liked me like I was their own. I just thought about what would be best for everyone else. A month after we moved in, my father-in-law asked his son if he could come stay with them for a while. At the time, it felt like a good thing that he was moving past the grief of his wife's death, but I don't think that was why he visited his son. He just wanted to get out of the house because of me. A few weeks later, when he got back, his passive-aggressive started again, but this time it was just constant nagging over small petty things. I moved the chair. No, I didn't. I broke the thermostat. No, and I changed Cheddit for good measure. I forgot to put the tools back. I messed up the library. Things like that, almost if I'm a child who's unwanted in this house. May 2017, we had a huge fight and I gave my wife a choice to either live with me or live with her father. That made her have a fight with her father, and she decided she was going to move out because, in her own words, he is never going to accept you as his son, he's delusional in grief. So we moved out but still lived close by because both our jobs were quite close. Our moving out, however, messed up the whole family dinner tradition as her father refused to come to our place for dinners. and we couldn't afford to host the whole family in our small apartment. It became a logistic nightmare, so her brother stepped up and said he was going to do it. I think their father was really mad at me for ruining the tradition because at every single dinner I had with him, he wanted nothing to do with me. I actually liked it this way because it was nice to not be attacked or defended all the time, but my wife started resenting me for it, and I think her younger sister and brother do too. It's been almost 2 years since we moved out. I don't attend family dinners with much regularity, maybe once a month if I'm being generous. I also got busier at work, so I've been spending less time with wife during the weekdays, which I prefer because her resentment towards me is making it a very difficult situation. She goes over to her brother's house every other weekend, and the other weekend is spent at her father's place where her brother's family and she get together for dinner. The only person on my side is my older sister-in-law because she thinks her father has treated me badly. She has visited us twice over the last year, and it's the only time I've gotten any affection from my in-laws. It feels like up until 2 years ago I had a huge family who all loved me, and now I'm getting more and more lonely by the month. I can't help but feel that the marriage has changed our lives for the worse. It's been more than 2 months since my wife and I have been intimate in our bedroom. It's been a lot longer since we've had a date for ourselves. I am at a complete loss as to what I can do to improve things. This post kind of grew when I was writing it. I had to edit some small details because I don't want my in-laws to find this post on Reddit and be hurt by what I've written. Update 2. I've decided to go ahead and initiate divorce because I do not want to be in this relationship anymore. December 17, 2019. Some folks have messaged me asking for an update, so I thought I could post it here instead of personal messages. I've been reading a lot of relationship help books and tried to talk to my wife many times. However, the fact is she and I just don't work as a couple anymore. I am no longer a priority in her life, and I am not okay with it. So last month I decided to talk to my lawyer and initiate divorce. It's been a really stressful time, especially from almost all of her family, but at this point I just want to look after myself and recover myself from this relationship. Once again, thank you for people who helped me in my previous posts. Update 3. My ex-wife F33 and I am 35 recently reconnected after she went through a bad breakup. Is it bad that I want to get back together with my ex-wife because of how lonely I am? October 26, 2023. There's some context to why we got divorced, but it will take too long to explain here. The summary is that I could not get along with her family and mostly her father, and that made my marriage an unhappy place for me. Her father always hated me and at one point told me that my ex-wife deserved eat better than me. If you want to read about my relationship with him, it is in the previous posts. I am not sure if I'm allowed to provide links, but after our divorce, I lost a lot of family and friends. I was very involved with family on her side, and losing them all at the same time because we got divorced made things difficult for me. I am an immigrant here, so I did not have many friends outside of my ex-wife's family. During the divorce process, the co-lockdown started, and that killed all my relationships with her side of the family, and I was really lonely here for a long time. I tried to go on dates, but the dating culture is so different now than 15 years ago. I could not find a person I wanted to spend more time with, but I think it was in part my fault too, and the one person who showed interest in long-term dating, she was much younger than me. I did not like her friends, and her friends were not thrilled with me either, so that relationship kind of died in 2021. Since then, I have stopped going on dates even, and I have lost touch with some friends and acquaintances because of or maybe because of age and not having a wife. Like they are all family men now, so making time is a difficult thing. But anyway, I saw my ex-wife a few times in the last few years, and we exchanged some quick words about well-being but nothing substantial. I knew she lost her father due to and I told her I was sorry for her loss because he loved her very much. She also told me she was dating a younger man and it was going well. However, we never sat down for tea or anything. It just never happened. But 2 months ago, I got a message from her saying she wanted to meet for lunch. During this lunch, she told me her relationship of 1 year and some months was not going well, and she was thinking of breaking up with her boyfriend. She and him did not agree on kids or not having kids, and she did not see a future with him. We kept in touch through the last 2 months, and 12 days ago she broke up with him. She told me a part of the reason was that after talking to me, she remembered how it was with me when we first started dating and how it was not the same with her boyfriend. She and I have been talking a lot in the last few weeks since the break-up. The first thing she does after waking up every morning is message me, and then 2 days ago she called at 7 in the morning saying she was at my door with some food. I'd been feeling ill, but I don't remember when I told her. However, she came with a lot of home-cooked food and soups which she knows I like. Felt like we were back in time 10 years ago. It's been a very confusing time since then. I am not sure what I feel. I think I am starting to love her again. She pays me so much attention, which is nice. She also keeps sending food or bringing it herself, and then last night she spent the night because I was too ill to get up and clean after myself. Nothing happened between us, but at the same time I think she wants to talk about us dating again, maybe. And I will admit all the attention and food and other gestures of love and care are starting to feel incredible. I am not sure who to talk to about this. I think I need to keep her away for a few days to be able to think clearly, but it has been so long since I have felt this good about myself, and a lot of our relationship problems were from how her father acted with me. So I keep thinking maybe we can try again and this time it will be better. Any advice or anyone wants to talk to help me think here, I would really appreciate it. Update October 4th, 29th, 2023. As for the update, it is a mixed bag. On Saturday, she came over to talk about our relationship and what we both wanted, what went wrong, etc. She asked to speak first and I really should have talked first instead, but I let her say her part, and it was focused on her relationship with her whole family, how important her father was to her, how much involved everyone else was in her relationship with me. She said sorry for letting her family and her father in particular meddle in our marriage. One of the things which hurt me a lot was when she mentioned that her ex-boyfriend never wanted to be around her family and hated going to any family events or even to a simple dinner, etc. She said that's when she realized how much easier I had made things for her in our marriage. It was incredibly hurtful because I remember telling her in so many different ways and at many times, even before the death of her mother, that I was okay with her family's involvement, but she needed to keep some distance between our relationship and her father in particular. She said that one time her father said something nasty directed at her ex-boyfriend, and after that time he refused to be in the same room as him. And I told her that he was right in doing that. I reminded her of the time when her father told me after 5 years of our relationship that he did not want to give me his blessing for asking you to marry. I don't know why, but hearing her say that she saw her family's behavior towards her boyfriend and that was what helped her see how tozy they can be was really hurtful. Like my feelings and my protest did not matter to her as much. I told her that, and she had tears in her eyes. She said sorry a lot of times about it. She said she was young and inexperienced at first, and then after her mother died, she was scared of losing her father and anything I said about him was difficult for her to hear because of that. I remember one time we were hosting the family dinner and her father said hurtful things about my cooking, and I brought it up with her and one of her siblings, and she refused to hear me even when her sister told her she should listen because I was right. Anyway, when we got talking about her father, the conversation kind of got away from me. We ended up talking about him for like 2 hours. I think she wanted to get a lot of it off her chest too. It was very emotional and exhausting though, as afterwards I did not have the energy to continue talking. I really wish I had talked first because I wanted to talk to her about our problems in the bedroom as well, but we had to make food first. She was saying how much she missed cooking with me and being around each other. I guess that's another thing her ex-boyfriend did not appreciate about her. After making lunch together, we just sat eating and talking about the few times we had some time for ourselves when we were married. She mentioned how much she liked going on 2 road trips we took together after we got married. For context, we used to have a lot more time when we first started dating as we were still studying, but then after getting jobs and having to take care of a house, it slowly diminished. After we finished lunch, I was too tired to continue our conversation, so we just kind of existed around each other for a little bit. We did talk about what we should not expect if we started dating. I told her I want to talk about our bedroom problems, but maybe not right away. She told me she wanted to say sorry for NOI listening to me about that too. She was a very, very selfish lover, and she told me it was a difficult thing for her to realize that she had ignored my needs in the marriage. She said if we date again, she wants us to see a relationship counselor together and by herself to make our dating life better. I think it is a good idea to talk to someone who can help me explain my side of things to her. I am not confident how helpful the conversation can be if it is just the two of us. She has a tendency to talk over me or to agree with me but not let me say my part. I want to talk to her about it too, but I think it's better if I wait until we have found some relationship counselor. But still, I think the outcome of the conversation yesterday was good. I want to ask her out on a date tonight for maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. She went back to her house last night, and I missed her presence around me a lot. I don't know if that is a good sign or if it means I'm too lonely. When she was here yesterday, she got a call from one of her siblings, and she mentioned me by name. I was not listening in, but I just heard her say my name, so my ears picked up on that part. I feel like that should be a good sign too, or maybe I'm just desperate to look for anything positive as take that as a sign. She wanted to come over today, but I told her I am feeling much better and she doesn't need to cook for me today. Also, I spent the morning today looking through our old pictures together. It was nice to remember the person she used to be. I feel like yesterday I saw a little bit of that person in her. Am I wrong to want to start something so soon? I know I said previously that I would wait, but waiting for the sake of it seems pointless. I do want to take things slow because I want us to find a relationship counselor soon, but I am afraid I will lose her if I show no interest. TLDR, we talked about our issues which were from her father. We also talked about dating life, about sex, and about relationship counselor. She said she wants to have individual counselor for her problems as well, which I think is the right thing. However, now I want to ask her out on a date properly this week, maybe on Wednesday. Is that too soon? Update February 5th, 20th, 2024. Hello everyone. I've been getting constant messages and comments in the old posts about updates, but there is not a lot to update about, so I'm making a post here instead of a subreddit. Also, since many people complained that my post was really long even though they didn't need to read it, I will say in brief about the update. We got back together, but we are living separately at the moment. Also, we started couples therapy. I am hopeful about my life, and I will try my best to remember to update here at some point in the future. Anyway, here's what I wrote. My ex-wife and I have reconnected over the last few months. About 2 months ago, she brought up how she wanted to officially give it another go, so we had a long talk about it. We talked about the past, in particular the state of our marriage towards the end and how much of it was because of my father-in-law and how much of it was instead because of her and me. She has been going to therapy about her father's death, which I did not know about before. She said she hasn't told anyone in the family either, so I am not surprised, but anyway, she talked about her relationship with him quite a lot. It was surprising to hear so much self-reflection from her about it, and it honestly meant a lot to me that she decided to open up about it. She has struggled all her life about her father's shadow over her, and she acknowledged that it is a little late for the broken-up marriage, but that she now knows better. She brought up therapy for us as a couple again, and I told her we need to if we were going to start dating again. She asked if we are dating again, and I said I asked the last time, so you have to this time, haha. So I guess it's official. However, we talked about keeping separate places for a while just for the convenience of it and for giving each other space. Things are slower this time around. She hasn't told any of her siblings, and I get the feeling her family is not as close as they used to be when her parents were alive. There are no official family get-together events other than Christmas and Easter. I think it's better for her that her siblings are not constantly around anymore. It gives her more space to find herself in a way. But it's a bittersweet feeling because I loved her parents' time of getting together as a big family every once in a while. Anyway, we decided to make it official, but I am at a loss about what the relationship is now. I keep calling her my ex-wife here, but she's also my girlfriend. So if there is a word for it, please let me know. It's a new feeling. There is familiarity in this relationship, but it is also very different from last time. We are not so young and naive. We have found a couples therapist, and I've already gone to 3 therapy events. It is really helpful to have the therapist in our conversations. It helps me talk without her talking over or agreeing and then continuing my conversation on her own. She's getting better at listening to me. She said how she grew up having to always listen to either her father or her older siblings. She is the youngest sibling. I don't remember if I have mentioned that before. So with me, she felt like she had to talk the most. It makes sense when she explains it, but it's like I was the only one around her she could talk to. So she got in the habit of not listening as well, but we are working on it. Also, I need to be more stronger in conversations, which I'm working on as well. It feels weird to be 2 adult people and having to learn how to talk all over again. I will admit that I had my doubts about therapists being able to really help, but I'm really glad about being wrong. Not everything is good news though. and she had to get a court order against her ex for abuse. I don't think she's in danger, but she said I should not write details about it here. Also, I am still struggling with loneliness, but I am trying to not fix it by this relationship. I have started talking to more people at work. Also, some of the people here who messaged me have been really amazing. I joined a small gaming group because of a message, and I'm really happy about it. There are a lot of good and kind people who wished me well, which I'm really grateful for, and after a long time in my life I feel positive about my future at the moment. I should probably message people more often, but coming to this website is always difficult because of how many hateful messages and comments pop up every time I post. The last time I posted it got a lot more comments than I am used to. There was a YouTube video about it, which I find a little bit disturbing, but the video itself was not as bad as the comments I received both on my posts and also in private messages. Some of the comments were extremely rude to me and my ex-wife. I get that people were trying to look out for me, but you are all only reading a short post on the complex life I have. I'll take a moment to address some of the things which bothered me a lot from these comments. No, my late father-in-law was not a racist person. He had a complicated life. His family struggled a lot, and so he had a very rough childhood and early adult life. He worked hard all his life to make a better home for his children. None of you know him, and the weirdly hostile comments about him are uncalled for. He's been dead for a while now, please let him rest. He was not a perfect person, but he was a good father despite his flaws. My ex-wife was not cheating on her previous boyfriend. We were talking in messages, and nothing happened. Her boyfriend was abusive towards her, and she was scared, and she needed a friendly person she knew just to talk about it. I really hope that people who have been constantly messaging me about how she's a terrible person or worse, how we are both terrible people, are never put in an abusive situation. She was trying to survive the best way she could, and despite us both wanting to, we did not do anything while she was actually dating the ex. Everyone keeps questioning why my late father-in-law hated me. I think I might not have written some previous posts very well. English is not my first language, so sometimes I can write things which are not as meaningful as I want them. He did not just hate me, he hated everyone outside of his family. My ex-wife has many sisters, and he didn't get along with any of their husbands. I was the favorite son-in-law, but that might just be because my ex-wife is the youngest child. Also, my late mother-in-law loved me, which carried over to my late father-in-law as well. He was a difficult person to get along with, but he did not just hate me, or at least he did not hate me the most. I don't know why he was like that, but he had a complicated life like I said before. Also, there was another story posted on Reddit which brought a lot of angry and unhelpful comments. Best of Reddit updates took all my posts from over the last 8 years and made them into a long story. It was not as bad as the YouTube video because some people were just trying to voice their concerns and wanted to advise a stranger to their best. I really appreciate all these comments and messages. However, a lot of comments and even more messages from that time are really hostile towards my ex-wife in particular. I don't want to address these messages because these people don't need any more fuel for their hate, but please remember that the people you're reading about are real people, not just stories on your posts. And lastly, I don't think I should have to say this since I read the rules on Best of Reddit updates and they have rules against commenting on other people's posts. But please do not bring hateful comments here. It does nothing other than cause distress. You are not helping anyone by being awful and rude. A kind word, even if it is something I disagree with, goes a lot farther than a distasteful word or worse. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.